Trust my heart, come what may. For it only takes a moment for your eyes to meet, and then your heart knows in a moment you will never be alone again. He held me for an instant, but his arms were safe and strong.
Get to those in a minute. Chair is going to call to order the Monday, September 21st, 2015 Single Family Design Board to order. Anyone in the audience wishing to address a subject not on today's agenda may come forward now.
Thank you.
Seeing no one come forward, the chair will close public comment and bring it back to the board for approval of minutes of our September 8, 2015 meeting. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Okay. Let's go through that. Anyone have any comments on 1632 La Vista del Oceano? Comments on 210 Meigs Road? Item 3, 9 Fellowship Circle. Item 4, 701 Island View Drive. Item 5, 113 La Plata. Item 6, 1056 Cliff Drive. Number 7, 1526 La Vista del Oceano. Item 8, 296 Schulte Lane. Hearing no further comments or changes, Chair will call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So
I
carried.
think I'll abstain. I wasn't at that meeting.
Okay, we have one abstention. Okay. Let's go to approval of the consent calendar for September 14th, 2015. Mr. Ng.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Consent calendar minutes for September 14th are as follows. Item A, 1123 Manitou Road. This project received approval of the review after final as submitted with a comment as noted. Item B, 498 Conejo Road. This project received project design approval with the NPO findings and final approval with the comments as noted. And item C, 1913 Mission Ridge Road. This project received project design approval with the NPO findings and final approval. Items A through C were reviewed by board members Motisha and Woolery.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion for approval?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a first and second. Is there any further comments? Questions? Hearing none, the chair shall call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Let's go to consent calendar for this morning, September 21st, 2015.
Okay, September 21st consent calendar minutes are as follows. Item A, 3232 Campanile Drive. This project received approval of the review after final as submitted. And item B, 1417 San Miguel Avenue. This project was continued to the staff hearing officer to return to consent with comments as noted. Item A and B were reviewed by board members Motisha and Woolery.
Thank you. Do I have a motion for approval?
I make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, chair will call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Mr. Ng, do we have any announcements?
No announcements.
I just have a question. We've got a pile of letters that just arrived on our desk, and there's one dated September 20th. Oh, here it is. So it's concerning 1535 La Cornelia. That's correct? This is from Karen Bridgman.
Oh, yes, that's correct.
So that's up on the corner. Okay. All right, and Meadow Road. Okay. So there are several letters on several items in today's agenda. If any of the board feel they need to have time to read these before we get to that, please let me know before they come up. Okay. Any subcommittee reports? As far as I know, we haven't met recently, so no committee reports. So let's go to item number 1, American Institute of Architects. Mr. Manson-Hing, welcome.
Thank you, Board Chair, board members. My name is Chris Manson-Hing, past president of the American Institute of Architects. I'm here to present this year's October the 3rd Architect Tours slate. I wanted to preface this that of the 9 projects that we have on tour this year, 8 of them have gone through the city's design review board. And it's really telling that we have these projects that the public can actually now view after they've gone through the process. A couple of these projects in particular, there's one on the west side that garnered a lot of passionate public discussion and went through the whole process where it was appealed and it went to the city council and then came back to the board. And so it's a great opportunity for the public to be able to see that. We have one that went through the HLC. We have a typical ranch house that has a modern addition to it. We have some government offices in town here that you can see how your city government is renovating and making sustainable spaces that have not been renovated in years so that their workers can have a better working conditions. We have a school and we have a typical project that has been in the Bungalow Haven area. So it's a diverse group of projects, and we're proud to have them on a tour this year. The information can be easily accessed at the AIASB website at aiasb.com. And when you pull it up, you'll see exactly what you're seeing on the screen right now. And you can either go to get more information, you can click on the red banner headline or click on the Architect Tours 2015. And immediately that would bring you to descriptions of each project. Following that, there is at the end of it, you can click on the area that leads you to tour details and purchase tickets. Tour details will bring you up to all the information about the day of the tour, etc. itself. And then the next tab would be that you can purchase tickets. But we're really happy to be able to present it this year, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone have any comments, questions?
Thanks very much.
All right. Well, I encourage all of us to go out and see these presentations.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Let's then go to item number 2, 324 Sherman Road. Final approval is requested. The project must comply with the staff hearing officer resolution number 026-15. Project was last reviewed on June 15, 2015.
You should ask.
Well, yeah, nobody's taken our picture.
Yeah,
Thank you.
ask Fred.
Hey, Fred? Fred?
Welcome.
What do you need?
If you could introduce yourselves, please.
Good. Amy Vaughn Potts, designer.
Jarrett Gorin, planner.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Miller, could you read what our last action was, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Number 1, the board appreciates the revisions and directions of the revised design. Number 2, study the structural feasibility of the main floor windows on the north elevation. Number 3, study increasing the pitch of the narrow span of roofing between the main and upper levels on the north and west elevations on sheet 412. Number 4, study reducing the size of the windows on the west elevation at the main floor bedroom number 1, and the upstairs bathroom, bedroom number 2. Number 5, so that the relatively thin window frames of the proposed windows show better on the facades. I think that means show. Provide a color board with proposing a darker or at least cream-colored stucco. Number 6, provide photos of adjacent properties to show how proposed colors relate to those on neighboring homes. Number 7, provide a landscape plan that includes the area downslope and shows the existing oleander and pittosporum located along the neighbor's property. Number 8, the board had positive comments regarding the project's consistency in appearance, neighborhood compatibility, quality of architecture and materials, and adherence to good neighbor guidelines. Action was taken by Bernstein, seconded by Woolery. The action was carried unanimously.
Thank you. If you could share with us how you've addressed those comments?
First of all, do you want to talk about the project first? Do you want to just give a overview of it?
I think we got project design approval at the last hearing, and we've addressed everything here. We actually missed the thing on the photos of the adjacent homes, but we've gone to a much more neutral color palette, which we'll walk you through, and it's compatible with everything up there that's grays and darker colors, and we think it's compatible. That'll be obvious when we get there. So let's just go through everything.
Okay, so we have indicated on the floor plans, roof plans, and exterior elevations, the gutters and the downspouts. And if you look on the roof plan on a 2.1, it shows where the roof drains are, where the gutter, and if you look at downspouts are on the floor plans and on the exterior elevations. We've looked at the sizes of the windows that you asked us to look at, especially in the bathrooms, and we've made that elevation with smaller windows, and you can see that on 3.0 and 3.1. And we've, if you look at the windows, I've made the frames more true to what the actual mill guard windows that we're going to be using, and the detail for the windows is on 3.1, and there are 2x6 exterior walls, so they will be set back a little farther than a typical 2x4. We've addressed the spark arrestor, and you'll see that on the color board. The garage door, we've kept it at 5 slats, but we do have a new color for that. Our landscape plan, we've updated with specific grasses, and I think it's much clearer this time than what we had last time. We've also indicated that on the site, on the landscape plan, and that the pittosporums and the oleanders will remain. All the actually screen vegetation on the property line will remain, and they will be protected during construction. We've added a note for that. We did our window study, as I said earlier. We've looked at the 412 pitch, and we think we've actually kept it at 3 and 12 to be consistent with the rest of the house, and we couldn't really go 4 and 12. We weren't asked to go 4 and 12 on the top, but we really can't do that because that would put us over our 30 feet height limit.
So just on that, we did look at that here, and it just, we understand what you guys were talking about with that, making this a little bit steeper. It looked a little strange when we actually got into it, looking at it in both. We did look really hard at being able to get the beam in there, which I know was a concern, and it will fit with this pitch. And we want both the pitches to match so that they're consistent all the way along.
The next thing was you asked for a darker stucco towards the brown, and we've presented that in our color board. The deck material is going to be a 2x6 wood deck, and that is, we have a detail of that. And then the last thing was just a study of the windows on the neighbor side to make it smaller and provide them more privacy.
That's on this side here. So these windows here were larger, and we made those into narrower, smaller windows. And then on the bathroom window,
We made it smaller.
and the bottom one got eliminated, right?
Yes, it did, right. In the
And
bedroom.
one of these ones got eliminated too.
Correct. So that's our project, and we're requesting final.
Okay, thank you. Can we put the color board back up there? Okay, before we go to questions of the board, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this project? There's open public comment. Seeing no one come forward, Mr. Ing, do we have any written correspondence?
No, we do not.
Okay, Chair will close then public comment and bring it back to the board for questions. Who has questions?
You see the color board? Thank you.
I have no questions.
Okay, anyone else have questions? I do have a question on the, so these are metal clad and their color is?
The dark brown. And that would be the same color as the
So
roof.
that's that color?
Yes, and that would be the roof also.
Okay, and just so this overall dimension of the frame appears to be if I'm reading it, 2 3/8 inch?
Correct.
Correct? Okay, and it gets a little smaller on the.
Right, because we have a awning window at the bottom, and we have a fixed at the top.
Okay, and the windows appear to be sitting back in about 3 inches.
Correct, because we have a 2x6 stud wall,
Okay,
and we'll put 2x4 here, so they will be sitting back in farther. Correct.
okay, and that'll occur for all the windows?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then, let's see, I was looking, you showed where all the gutters go.
Right.
Where are the downspouts?
You
Oh,
see
they're
that,
right here,
yeah,
okay,
you'll
so
see
it's
them in
this
the-
light
Right, and then we
shade
painted
color.
out the same color as the stucco.
Okay, and then this trim color is going where?
There's no trim.
I mean, whatever that color is.
This is the garage door, is
Okay.
the light green, and then the front door is the dark green.
Okay, so if I go
Let's
to
go back to
the,
3.0.
okay,
Right, so here's the garage, and then this is actually set back in underneath, there'll be this is set back in, so that actually will be a little darker because it's set back
okay,
in.
and it's that color there?
Correct.
And is that a wood door?
I think so, yes, it's gonna be a wood door with painted slats,
And
vertical slats.
then this door is wood or?
A wood door with horizontal slats.
Okay,
Correct.
and it's that color?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
How far is setback?
What's that?
Front door.
The front door? 2.0? Sorry.
Foot, 2 feet?
All right.
So it's 6.5 here. So yeah, you're right. Probably about it's considerably farther back than.
And you have light fixtures here, and that door, is there a?
There will be one right here in the.
So there's a recessed
that's
light.
right in the correct, and then we have this light on each side of the garage and on the doors in the rear of the house.
Okay. All right, other questions? Yes.
Are you under Tier 3 water requirements for this project, or is it exempt because it's a ceasefire?
No, this project is not subject to Tier 3.
Tier 2.
It's a Tier 2 project.
Other questions? I just have one. Let's see, on our last comment, we had provide a landscape plan that includes area downslope and shows the existing oleander and put a storm along the neighbor's property. Are we satisfied, landscape members?
They're right there.
I think the landscape plan looks good. Do you need to show us some kind of Tier 3, Tier 2?
On the site plan on the front, I have a rain barrel, and that will take care of it. That will comply with Tier 2.
Okay.
And then here's the oleanders and histosperms, and there's a note saying that they screen vegetation on the property lines, and the fence will be protected during construction.
Okay, other questions? Let's go to comments. The applicant's requesting final design approval, or excuse me, final approval. So it's our obligation to determine whether we believe the set appears to be final.
I like, I think you've done a great job of fulfilling our requirements, and I like the fact that the windows and the doors are set back because it's going to give some shadows and some darkness to outline the windows and the doors and everything instead of making it just a flat, like it looks like on the elevation. It will not look like that. I like the project. Yeah,
Okay.
I think it passes our guidelines.
Other comments?
Well, just kind of wondering what happens once it's in the rain barrel. What are you going to do with it?
It said that you can for tier 2. It says that you can drain to the overflow onto a permeable surface. And if you see that in the back, it's all native grasses, so that would be permeable.
So you're just going to take a hose or something like
Yeah,
that?
send it down. Correct.
And, I mean, I'm sure the building will look at it, but do you think one rain barrel is enough?
So we're in a very steep slope here, and I can add another one. It's not, but we're at a really steep slope on the back side there, and I can't put a rain barrel in the site in any of the setbacks. So I'm hoping that one will be. If it's not, I will add another one. But again, I can't put it in any of the setbacks. I would prefer to put one on the other side. But
Right.
that's a building department requirement.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying.
I think I'm not going to be able to support this project, not because it's a bad design, but I'm having problems looking at our design criteria, and I'm very sensitive about avoiding this kind of architectural situation. So I don't see that really is compatible with our design guidelines because, and I'm just saying it strictly from what I'm reading from the book. If you look here.
You lost your mic.
I lost my mic. Where's your new elevation?
Elevation.
Freeze.
You have these large decks going on, and to me, your house is actually going the opposite direction of what our design guidelines are recommending. So I leave it to the esteem of my other fellow architects, but to me, it's not consistent with our design guidelines. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm struggling with it. So those are my comments.
Other comments?
Yeah. Did we have this discussion the last
Yes,
time?
we
And
had this discussion several times on this
I
project.
sort of remember, and what was
Kind
the
of tabled
consensus?
it.
Well, let me see if I can. This project has been reviewed several times. We had that discussion the very first time this project came to us. The applicant has made a valiant effort to take a very simple design, a very economical construction project, and moved it in a direction that I believe, that's why we gave it project design approval last time, that it got to a point where we felt it was maybe not totally acceptable to our guidelines, maybe the architecture wasn't exactly what we were looking for, but it was, I believe the majority of the board was in favor of the fact that it was at least acceptable. It's probably not an outstanding piece of architecture, but it was at least compatible with the other homes in the neighborhood. That's I think why we were concerned about the color, and the applicant has brought back, as we reviewed today, a set of colors. So I think we're at a point where we've already given this project design approval. I don't know that we can step back on that, but that's up to each individual on the board. But certainly the applicant has made every effort to address all of our comments and concerns over a long period of time. This project has been reviewed, I think, Mr. Ng, probably 3 or 4 times, if not more.
Yeah, that's correct. And also I do want to add that the staff hearing officer did give some direction to the applicant to step the house or keep the massing of the house away from the rear yard. So I believe the applicant has responded to that as well. And that's how this design came to be.
And if you also recall, we had the neighbor here on at least 2 occasions, as I recall, concerned about how the house addresses the house to the west and the hedge that's there now, the Pittosporum. That's why we had it shown on the drawing. So I think this has had a lot of scrutiny. As I say, yes, it may not be a good piece of architecture that we all would embrace, but it's certainly an acceptable piece of architecture for the neighborhood. At least that's, as I recall, our discussions up to today. Other comments?
I would like to know, because I remember there was some controversy, and I know this has been here several times. What was the resolution? Did the neighbors see the final? Is everybody on board now? What's the story?
We have had contact with the neighbors both times that he was here, and he didn't seem to have an issue with it. He just wanted to make sure that his plants were protected, that his fence was protected, and if we went back to the May 1st, second time we were here, we had a big deck facing and hit right over by his property, and we've moved that back. We've really tried to, we've taken bigger windows on his side of the, and we've made them smaller, so we have addressed it.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yes, I can support the project because I think they have complied with everything that we requested them to change, and they seem to have all the details in order, and I think it's ready for final.
Thank you. I'll be voting in favor of the project. As I think I've outlined, we collectively have looked at this project over a long period of time, and I think it's moved from initially from a project that was quite questionable to a project that's acceptable. I would like to, though, however, caution staff, particularly the building department, that if it's my clear understanding that if the initial contractor that was identified on the early paperwork is still attached to this project, they've had some problems in the past complying with city building department requirements. I want to make sure that, Mr. Ng, that you notified building department that I would expect the building department would take these plans and the color boards and make sure that it's built in accordance with the drawings that we approved today. Okay. Any other comments? Chair will look for a motion. This project is here for final approval. Okay.
I move to give this project final approval. Sorry. Move to give this project final approval. Project is consistent with the character of the neighborhood. It is compatible with the neighborhood in size, bulk, and scale. The quality of architecture and materials is acceptable. And that's it.
Okay. There is a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Is there further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, Chair will call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. You're ready to go to the building department.
Thanks so much.
All right. Let's go to item number 3, 1542 Cliff Drive. This is here for a third concept review. The action may be taken of sufficient information provided. The project was referred from the consent calendar of September 8th, 2015. Hi. Yes.
Just skim over
I will give you that as soon as we get through this process. Okay.
We need a 10-day.
10-day appeal period, excuse me, for Sherman Road, 324 Sherman Road had the 10-day appeal period on our decision today. Okay. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Good afternoon. My name is Tom Oxner, project architect. I'm here representing Mike and Marie Kinderman. I have Marie Kinderman here with me. And
welcome. Okay. Let's see. Mr. Miller, do you have...
Well, it says here, no comments.
No comments from our
Continued
last...
2 weeks to full board, no comments.
So that's coming from
us. Yes.
consent calendar?
Yes.
No,
Okay.
and I reviewed it.
Oh, I thought it was you and me.
No, I think it was us too.
They
It was
picked it
a,
up to full board.
Oh,
board,
this is
we
a
picked it up
different one
to-
than I'm.
Perhaps you could share with us why you felt you needed to pick it up to the whole board.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we thought the full board should review this project because 21. I was there for this. The proposal for the 21? I remember being there for this too. Oh, well, that's all right. Go ahead. Maybe did we review
I know
it
why
twice?
this-
It was twice on consent, and the second time, he and I kicked it to the full board.
Okay, so
We picked it up to full board
maybe one of you could just tell us why.
because the 21-foot wall is a very controversial item and has stirred some public controversy.
Did you have public at that meeting?
no.
Letters?
No, we did not.
We did.
Did we? Okay, well,
Okay, so there were
not your
folks
imagination.
there that were concerned. Okay.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
We just didn't,
But you
the
and
two
I
of us
keep-
didn't want to take, the two of us didn't want to take,
Okay.
didn't want to make a decision on something that was so controversial and so different than,
Okay.
And when you and I viewed it, no one was here to represent it. Remember, we were looking at it alone, and someone didn't show up.
Okay.
That was the first time. Okay, I see.
So it's been reviewed twice at consent. There seems to be some uneasiness, so you brought it to the full board.
Okay, I guess it was you guys then. 'cause
All
I
right,
saw it the first time.
so we don't really have any comments. I do have public speakers, I do have public comment. And so what I'd like to do is allow you to present what you're proposing. Then we're going to go to public comment. But before we actually take public comment, I'm going to give a few minutes to the board to be able to review. I think we have one letter?
two.
Two letters. On this subject, so I'll give a little bit of time for the board to read that, and then I'll summarize those, and then we'll go to public comment, and then we'll come back to the board for questions and comments. But before we do all of that, could you share with the whole board what you're proposing to do?
Okay, so I've got a presentation. I've got to go through a number of items here because there is a little bit of history here that you really do need to know about. When I'm done, Marie's going to fill in with some of the personal view of what's going on. This project's located on the north side of Cliff Drive, near where La Vista del Oceano is. You can see down here, it's right on the uphill side of Cliff. The scope of the project consists of two items. It consists of a privacy wall, which is located outside of the setback, beyond the setback line, and an awning, a retractable awning over 20% of the required open yard space. These are both complying items outside of the setback area. The project's here for full board because it was, during the consent agenda, as it was recommended by staff, the neighbor to the north was concerned about the loss of view, and our privacy wall was something that they felt needed to be reviewed. So the neighbor to the north, to kind of clarify, this is the house directly to the north off La Vista del Oceano. This is looking at it from La Vista del Oceano. And I'm going to turn the page here and go to some photos so you can get an idea of the presence of that house as it is seen from the subject parcel. So this is Cliff Drive here. This is the Kinderman's home. It's a one-story hacienda. This is the neighbors to the north. This property sits up 5 feet from grade from this parcel, plus it's a 3-story house. So there's a significant impact. As you can see, this is looking from the rear yard. Well, let's start down from Cliff Drive. You can see there's the 3-story house behind it, and you can see it in these sequences of shots along Cliff Drive. These are photos of the current condition of the rear yard. I'm going to get into why the condition of the rear yard is so bare and so has no privacy. So to do that, let's go back to the site plan. What I've done is I've done a little supplementary drawing here that's going to help us all understand sort of the history of what's going on with this property here. So basically, when the Kindermans bought the property 5 years ago, there was a hedge that existed within their property line 5 feet up from this retaining wall, which is outside the setback. So this hedge right here existed. When they moved in, they were approached by the neighbors to the north, and they reached an agreement to maintain this hedge at a given height by the Kinderman's gardener, since the hedge is on the Kinderman's side, and they would alternate payments for trimming this hedge. And what that hedge looked like, to give you an idea here, let's look at what the hedge used to look like. So these are images. This is an image of the hedge as you're looking down the property line. There's the neighbor's home. There's the old fence. There's the hedge. My best guess is this is drawn pretty well. It's about 11 feet up. That's about where that hedge was. So you can see that had a pretty good privacy impact. There we are looking from the fountain in the center, looking up. And as you can see, you can be in the rear yard and still have privacy from the home above. This is a good one. You can kind of get an idea as to the height of that hedge and what it was performing. So with regard to what that hedge was, so what happened subsequently, Mr. Kinnaman works out of the country, and in their absence, the neighbors were to contact the gardener to trim the hedge. Apparently, when they came home one time, the hedge was hacked down, and there was fences that were broken, and it was a big scene. Subsequently, there was a police report filed with witnesses, and I just want to put this into the record. There's the police report, and this is the witness statement of the situation that occurred. So it's safe to say at that point there was no longer the ability to reach amicable agreements between these two neighbors. Shortly after that altercation, there was a complaint filed by the neighbor to the north. The complaint took advantage of the new hedge ordinance, which basically allowed this hedge to be really taken down because when you combine the wall height with the hedge height, basically it leaves about 30 inches of hedge. So when that hedge came down, it was like bleacher seats looking down onto a stadium. I mean, it was really, and then to add insult into injury, the trellis that you've seen in those photos is actually in the required open yard, so that has to come out too. So you're really looking at a barren rear yard with absolutely no privacy at all. So this permit was applied for at that point. The Kinderman said, okay, well, let's try to work with what's allowed. Let's go and apply for a permit to cut the hedge down, to build an 8-foot fence, which is the highest fence allowed at the property line, and we've got to remove the arbor as well. So that took place. Permit was issued. Permit was not finalized yet. The trellis is still there. They're trying to hold on to that trellis until they can come up with some kind of a resolution here because of the rear yard. It's just not usable. So these photos here now represent the current state that we're in right now. So you can see this is that 8-foot fence right here, and it really has little impact on the privacy. So, this is what we can get if we follow the rules relative to the allowable structures and hedges in the setback when you're dealing with a property like these two. So at that point, we had no other choice than to look at abandoning what we can do in the setback and go outside the setback and look at what structures are allowed. And typically, you can build 2-story homes. You can build a lot of things within your building rights with outside of the setback to enhance the single-family purpose of this neighborhood. And certainly, privacy is on the top of the single-family desire. So what we did was we looked at not just trying to be completely disrespectful to the neighbors. We looked at introducing a screen wall that's outside the setback that basically we did site studies, and this is the 3-story house here, and I've got this one here really shows it better, so I'm going to put this one front center. So this is what that hedge did, and the depth of that hedge actually had an impact. It wasn't just the height of it. So what we did was we tried to recreate a situation. If we went to a louvered screen wall, and we run the louvers horizontal up at this height, you can still see through them and see the horizon. It's not like it was a second story that's going on here. And then these louvers would be permanently fixed in a position that would create some sort of privacy. This is the awning down here, over 20% of the area, which is helping with some of that privacy. So we thought that this was a good solution. Staff said, hey, it's all up and fine. We'll put it on consent. I've got colors that we're proposing for the louvered, and colors for the awning would match the awning out in front. Let me see here. So, and then one last photo before Marie has something to say here. So this is basically this is Cliff Drive right now. So these are the two homes to the west of the Kindermans on Cliff Drive. and they're two-story homes. And, you know, they exercise their building rights to put a second story up outside the setback. All we're asking to do is exercise our building rights to go with a 17-foot high wall with some transparency to it for the purposes of screening and not be stopped by a view concern. And do you have anything to say?
Yes, I do, actually. I just want to take a few minutes.
Speak into the microphone, please.
I just wanted to take a few minutes to just read something I put together in regard to our privacy issue. It's been a huge issue since we've had the hedge cut down, and I'm just going to read it really fast just because I know we have a 2-minute time. So our beautiful green hedge, which was provided, beautiful green hedge, which provided us with privacy as well as a sound barrier. Due to our neighbors' complaint, we were forced to cut down the hedge, which left us with no choice but to put up a wood fence that is unattractive and does not provide us with adequate privacy. My teenage daughter, who's here with me today, cannot use her bathroom without the neighbors being able to look directly in. And if you were able to come on our site, you'll be able to see that it's absolutely 100% true. This has made her very uncomfortable and upset and not wanting to use her bathroom anymore. For my bedroom, I used to sit outside directly in front of my room, just having tea in my pajamas privately, slowly waking up. I meditate, being able to do that, enjoying the beautiful Santa Barbara weather. However, it has all changed because our neighbors can see directly down onto us. So I don't do that anymore onto our patio, which makes me very uncomfortable, and therefore I just don't do that anymore. So we also purchased, while we had the hedge, we purchased a beautiful and really expensive hot tub because I have rheumatoid arthritis. And my doctor suggested that soaking in the hot tub alleviates not only pain, but also some stress on the muscles, which I experience every day. I used to use a hot tub every day, which is conveniently located just outside of my door, my room, so I can have privacy to go in and out. I no longer use the hot tub because where my hot tub is placed, they can look, there's a huge space they can look directly in, so I don't have that anymore. So I don't even use that. Also, I'm an artist, and I love to paint in my once beautiful patio. I used to listen to music, relax. I made this whole patio to be very tranquil. It's a sanctuary I created with the beautiful plants, statues, an outdoor studio, a space which is private and mine. Sometimes something I've been always proud of. I no longer have the beautiful private space, and I no longer paint because it makes me sad to paint in a barren patio like that. I don't have a space anymore. My family, my whole family and I, we don't spend time in our patio or entertain because the lack of privacy. Recently, we had a birthday. We hurried up and did it because we don't have any space we don't have a big space to have a big family. We have, so we had a birthday, but we had to hurry up because you could see them looking right down on us, which is, I mean, it's horrible. It's my mom's birthday and my birthday, and we can't do that kind of thing because it's been taken away. So ultimately, our privacy has been taken away from us, which is really unfair. And I mean, I just feel, why should we be made to live without privacy because of our inconsiderate neighbors' need for views? I mean, it's just views. So I believe that privacy is a necessity. I believe that we have the right to privacy. I also believe that views are a luxury. And I hope that you would take that into consideration and even come. I invite you to please come and have a look, because you would be astonished at the loss of privacy we have now, currently. From every part of our home, we have 6 French doors. You stand at any space and you could see them being able to look directly in. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, before we go to the public comment, we do have 2 letters, so I'm going to give 4 or 5 minutes for the board to review those because we just received them at the beginning of the meeting and haven't had an opportunity to read them. So let's take a few minutes to read those.
David.
This is from Mike Kinderman. I thought we'd put it in the file. It's a bit lengthy. I encapsulated it in my
So
presentation.
it's part of the public?
It's from the applicant, yes.
Okay. And what is this letter?
Looking at different.
What's that letter?
Oh, this one is this accompanies the police report.
So that's part of the police report.
That's part of the police report, yes.
That's something else.
Yeah,
There's several.
they're all stapled together, so I'm looking
Yeah,
at
just the first
Yeah,
two.
there's other
Which is the
letters
couple
for other
this month.
items. Okay, has everyone had sufficient time to read it?
Yes.
Okay, then let's go to public comment. I have Janet Napier. Please come forward. If you can sit in that chair and speak into that microphone. Put this microphone on for you.
Hold on.
Speak into that, please.
Yes, well, if you have the chance to read the letter, you will realize that there are two sides to this story. That we thought that we were continuing an arrangement with the trimming of the ficus that we had with the prior owners of 1542, whereby they would trim it once a year and we would trim it once a year. And so we had our gardener do it when it was our turn. He did a good job. He used a line so it would be nice and straight. The Kindermans were not happy with that. And so they failed to do any more trimming after December of 2012. So the trees kept growing. It wasn't just a question of view. We were very concerned that the roots of these ficus would be damaging the foundation of our house. We'd already dug up a huge piece of root. So anyway, out of desperation, earlier this year, we went to the city to see what could be done, and that was when we discovered there'd been a previous citation on the height of the ficus. The previous owners had been told that it couldn't go higher than 8 feet. So that's when we filed our complaint, and this whole thing got started. So I just wanted to let you know, however, that we do not wish to have an adversarial relationship with our neighbors. We are willing to work with them on a privacy plan that would be acceptable to both parties. However, I strongly object to a 21-foot wall, essentially like a 2.5-story building to the south of and very close to our house that would block our sun, block our first and second stories of our sun, our warmth, gas heating bills likely to go up in the winter, our air circulation and sight. And we feel very strongly that it would not be compatible with the Mesa neighborhood architecture and would be setting a bad precedent for future enormous walls.
Thank you. Okay, I have a speaker slip from Conrad Hogan.
Conrad Hogan. I understand you have 2 letters. There was 3 submitted, 1 this morning and 2 on last Friday.
I have a letter dated the 21st today. I have another letter, it may have been an email, dated the 21st. That's all I have.
Okay, I have after consulting with a local architect, I have a letter with some issues I'd like to submit.
Okay, you have 2 minutes, sir.
Okay. I'd like to submit that to you in writing, and you could look at that at some point if you will. I just want to reiterate a couple of things to you. The issue regarding the hedge, the ficus hedge, in our minds, is that it was out of compliance to begin with, and we made a complaint to try to correct the problem of it growing too high. Between the city and the Kindermans, there was a decision for it to be cut down. We had no say in that. We weren't consulted in that. We weren't consulted in these plans. And although we're willing to consider supporting the Kindermans in some kind of modifications to provide something reasonable to them and to us, we think that this particular project is excessive in that regard and is not compatible with neighborhood architecture. I'll just quickly cover a couple items here for the letter from the architect. Size and scale is not compatible. Proposed fence is not integrated into existing neighborhood. Height is excessive for a fence, would require substantial structural support and foundation to protect not only the neighbor but the owner from a seismic event. Fence height is not minimized, probably visible along the entire width of the property from the south side of Cliff Drive. Perception of massive bulk has not been mitigated. Natural materials not used. No landscaping integrated with the fence to reduce visual impact. Fence creates a vertical canyon. 21-foot tall fence is not set back from property line an acceptable distance to reduce the appearance of height. Not a precedent that should be set for a fence in any Santa Barbara neighborhood, and that there are other creative solutions that would be more acceptable.
Okay, thank you. Is that a letter you're going to submit to us?
Yes, I have several copies here. I'll just give you.
Okay, is there anyone else in the audience wishing to address this project? Seeing no one else come forward, Cheryl close. Pass these along. Cheryl, close public comment and bring it back to the board for questions. Who would like to start?
Can I make one comment I forgot to make, or is it not appropriate?
Let's let the board make questions, and then we'll make a note of what you have.
Wasn't there a city change about the 8-foot requirement of the hedge now?
Yes, I'll go over that in a minute, but
Okay.
when we can have Mr. Ng also help us on that. Who else?
What is the distance? I don't see any dimension here between the house to the north to the new proposed 21-foot fence. What is that distance?
It looks like 12 feet.
I can't speak for the house to the north. It looks like it's about the 6-foot setback you might expect based upon the photos and what I can see.
And then 6 more feet?
But our fence complies with the 6-foot setback. I mean, it's not a fence, it's a screen wall. A fence is something along the property line.
And then my other question is from the top of the existing wall, how tall is that proposed fence? I don't see this part.
Show me.
It's
all
right here.
Yeah, that part right there is.
Can we do that on the camera, please? We're on TV, I'm
yes.
sorry.
So the distance from the top of the wall to the top of the fence is 9 feet.
Okay, other questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you, the materials of the 21-foot, what you're calling the screen wall, what is it?
Yes, that screen wall is louvered wood. It's a dark stained wood, so it should kind of disappear. It's not something that's going to reflect light. It's a natural material that should allow a bit of transparency, so it really won't have a wall. It's intended to be something that looks more organic, and that's why it transitions from the stucco up into the wood.
Do you have a piece of that with you?
I have just a color of the stain that we're looking to go with. It's a deep wood stain that I could pull out here. but we're open to the finish on that. So this is color here. So the awning would be like this to match the existing house, and then we would go with a deep brown solid base stain for the wood.
So the awning is in the backyard. And
Right.
so the neighbors, if there is an awning there, and the neighbors in their letter said that the retractable awning might be acceptable, that might give them privacy. So why also do you need the 21-foot
The retractable
thing
awning,
all the way along?
Yeah, well, the retractable awning is just something. There's so many restrictions on what you can do in your open yard, and their backyard. It's all required open yard. So the awning, you're only allowed to do a cover over your open yard up to 20%. So
20%.
20% of it. So what we're looking to, even from this position up here, if we go with the solar access ordinance, which we're complying with, so we're not taking out as much more sun than what would be allowed for under that ordinance, you still have the ability from this level to look right down into this part of the courtyard. So the awning gives them the opportunity to close the awning in that deeper part of the courtyard to get some kind of privacy when these lights are on or when these spaces are occupied of the neighboring house. The screen wall can only do so much if it complies with the solar access ordinance. It can't get up as high as, say, a second-story structure could back here. If we were to take the screen wall and move it back deeper into their property, it could get up higher, but then they're using up their open yard, and then they'd have real privacy, but they'd have nothing, they'd have no space to do anything.
Is there any way that you could, get a modification to allow that to be bigger?
Basically, our take on that is that, when staff looks at a situation that meets the zoning requirement like this does, that it kind of supersedes a modification in the sense that here's a solution that meets the solar access ordinance, it meets the setback, it meets the height, and therefore is a modification warranted. And what would that modification be for? Modifications, I understand, for putting structures in required open yards are pretty hard to get. And I don't know what kind of a mod would be looked at. And we've looked at so many things that finally, when staff looked at this, they were putting it on consent. They said, this is on consent. Mm-hmm. And so now we're in a situation where, okay, well, the owners have gone through so much. They've taken this hedge down because they were told to by the city. They weren't given an option. The only option was to comply with the neighbors to agree on a mutual modification that was subject to the approval of the neighbors in order to get something higher.
You would have done that.
Excuse me, ma'am.
That was after the police report.
Let me stop. This is a public hearing. You've had your opportunity to speak, and that's it. Okay? It is now to this board and to the applicant. So please don't interrupt this. This is being broadcast. Okay? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. One thing, too, that it would be helpful to have some dimensions on some of the questions I'm asking for, like what is the depth of the awning, the proposed trellis?
Well, it's right up here on the left, upper left, so you can kind of see it, right? It says that they're 6 inches.
Wait, what?
Up here in the upper left, partial section.
And where do you see the dimension of
the louvers are 1.5 by 6 inches.
No, I'm not talking about that.
You're not talking about that?
I'm talking about the trellis.
Oh, those cables are, they cover 20% of the.
So what is that distance?
That distance is, I'll tell you, that distance is, the site plan, it's 10 feet into, so those are 5-foot spaces between the cables.
Okay.
Yes, Ms. James.
Yes, thank you. I guess I really don't understand the controversy with the hedge, and I'm wondering why there can't be a hedge with a non-invasive root system to solve the problem. Anyway.
Questions?
Yeah, you were, Mr. Chairman, you were going to make some comments about the fence
Yes.
and the hedge.
Yes.
I have some things, but I'll hold that off until you make that. But I have something
Other
else.
question. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is the third time I've looked at the project, and I've had time to, basically think about it a lot. And I'm wondering why this screen here can't be put over the open area in the backyard to screen it a lot closer. I mean, this screen is put up so high because it's back so far away from what you're trying to.
The further back we put it, the lower it gets for the solar access ordinance. So the further we push it into the site, the higher it can go.
Well, how about making something like this and making screening just above what you're trying to hide?
Those are non-conforming with the open yard requirement. Anything that spans the open yard that projects more than 2 feet into the open yard is not permissible under the requirements for an open yard. The 1,250 square feet of open yard cannot be. It's got to be outside the open yard. Our open yard comes to that wall, and therefore our open yard, our solution needs to happen. Fortunately, we have a little window between the 6-foot setback and the area that creates a 1,250 square foot open space. And that happens to be right where we're proposing our screen wall. There are very little options here, very few options.
So that whole hacienda area, that patio area, is your recognized open yard.
That is the required open yard. And that's why that trellis needs to come down as well. That's currently in there.
I do want to add briefly that you can have fences and walls and such in your open yard.
And Mr. Ng, how high can those walls be? Do we know?
Well, if they are outside of your setback, then they can be as high as the height limit allows for the zone.
So in theory, if I hear you correctly, what you just said is fences and walls are allowed in the 1,250 square foot open yard, correct?
Correct.
And if fences and walls are allowed, then they can be as high as the house is allowed.
It could be up to 30 feet.
Up to 30 feet. So in theory, there could be 30-foot high walls inside here.
Yeah, only vertical elements. Yeah.
Vertical elements, 30 feet high.
Correct.
Correct. Okay.
And they have to be vertical because they be sloping.
Well, but before you get there, so it could be 30 feet high within that 1,250. The applicant has the right to build a 2-story home to 30 feet high, correct?
Yes. Although, of course, it would be subject to this board's review.
It's subject to review, et cetera, but the applicant or the owner of the property, maybe not this current owner, but some future owner, could build a second floor up to 30 feet, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
As long as it also meets like solar access ordinance,
solar
and
access
et cetera.
and proper review, et cetera. But also, based on what you just said, they can build up to 30 feet vertical walls within the 1,250 open yard square area. Okay. So if you could double check that, please. Okay. Maybe you can call upstairs and make sure we get that correct before we proceed into our discussion. I'd appreciate that. Let's go to other questions. Okay. Yes.
So in your drawing, or like you were suggesting that it's open below, but it just has a panel.
Okay. But let's leave that to comments. We're at
I
questions.
just wanted to understand here.
So we're at questions now. So let's see if we can. So the new fence that was erected, the one you showed in the photograph, where is that on the plan now to make sure?
That's right on the property line.
Okay, so that's here and it goes the whole length.
Yes.
And that's 8 feet.
That's
okay.
8 feet.
The hedge that was there when it was trimmed the last time on December 2012, how high was that, more or less?
I've got it drawn in right here. It was approximately 11 feet from the grade.
Okay. At what point did it get cut lower?
To comply with the notice of violation, it got cut to a point of a combined height from the bottom of the wall to the top of the hedge of 8 feet. So this point...
And when was that notice given to you? Before the new hedge ordinance was...
Well, that was given to us. The violation was set on February, I believe.
Of what year?
Of last year. Hold on, I've got it. It's in this letter here. Let's see. No, that's the wrong one.
But I'm trying to determine, was that notice given before the new hedge height was put into place?
In February of 2015,
February 2015.
the notice of violation was sent from the city.
Okay. And Mr. Ng, could you?
He
took off. He took off. Could we call upstairs and confirm when the new hedge ordinance took place,
I think
please?
it was July of 2014.
Yeah.
July of 2014.
February.
Okay. Right. Then let me go to my other questions. On the plan, there was mentioned by the owner that there's a hot tub. Where is that on this plan?
Yeah, so the hot tub is located right here.
Okay. And then there, in the photograph you have, there appear to be something, a fountain, or is that the hot tub?
The fountain's right here against the
Okay.
wall.
And where is that? How big is it?
It's the fountain is about 6 feet high. There's the top of the.
Okay.
there's
Where?
top.
Okay. So where is it in the plan?
Dead center right here.
You can see it on the elevation print.
Okay. Well, yeah, I understand that, but I didn't see it in the plan. So it has a.
But yeah,
It's just a square,
it has a
fairly
very,
thin.
Yeah, very very thin.
Okay.
Reservoir.
Okay. And then the trellis was taken down because it has a horizontal element that occupies the 250 square feet,
Right.
correct?
Yeah, the trellis is a structure, and you
Because it has a horizontal element to it. Correct.
and it's above a certain height.
Okay. And then on, this may be a question to Mr. Ng. On the property to the north, right now, that measures approximately 6 feet from the property line. Is that considered a side yard setback? Is there a backyard? What is the setback requirement for this house?
That's an interior setback, and I'm not at this point. I'm not 100% sure of the zone. So,
okay. So if it's zoned, that could be a 6-foot side yard setback or interior yard setback, not a normal setback for a backyard that we see in some other zones. Correct?
Yeah, and also I don't know exactly when that house was constructed, so it may be non-conforming.
It may be non-conforming because the setback may be greater now than it was
Yes,
when it was
that's
built.
correct.
Okay. Let's see.
Oh, and Mr. Chair, just to follow
Yes.
up on the question regarding the height of fences in the open yard, I
Yes.
did check with our lead zoning plan checkers, and there is no height limit, only the limit that the zone allows regarding height. So you could potentially have a 30-foot.
Okay, so you could
tall
have pieces in
fence
here that are vertically
in the middle of your open yard.
And then with regard to the hedge itself, there was some mention by our landscape people that a different kind of hedge with a less root problem. Typically, we see pittosporums as hedges. What's the root issue there? None? They typically don't.
It was ficus that.
Ficus will go horizontally,
Horrible.
but the pittosporums
Yeah, that would have
won't.
been really bad to
Okay.
keep that.
And
So I
then
can
I'm
see
going to rely on
Fast growing enough.
my two colleagues to the side. From a sun ordinance standpoint, I don't remember off the top of my head, if one were to build a 2-story house here, do we have a solar angle problem to the next property line? Is that it?
Yeah,
right there?
it's 12 feet up in that 30-degree angle.
Okay, so if you built a second floor,
You're well within it.
you're well within it.
Oh, yeah.
So the fact that you've taken into account the solar ordinance here, that would bring the line down to here, which would then block solar access to this floor? Am I reading that correctly? Or does it have to go from the property line? How does it
It's
work?
the property line, 12 feet up in the zone, and then a 30-degree
Okay,
angle.
so that's the solar ordinance.
That's the solar
Okay,
ordinance, and this
so-
complies, exactly.
So that would comply whether it's a wall or a second floor or whatever it might be?
Yes.
Okay. So that complies with the solar ordinance. Okay. Any other questions?
But, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just to continue, so if there, let's say, were going to be a second story, wouldn't that be too close to the lot line, though?
No? It's all within the compliance of the setback.
Outside the second.
Okay? So that's why I was trying to clarify, they or a future owner. And remember, we're here to look at these projects not based on maybe the current circumstances of the current owners, whether be they neighbors or the owners of the property. I believe we're to look at the solutions that come before us to remain well after current owners are there. So, we're here to look at the long-term impact on the neighborhood that a project may have. Yes.
And so with the new hedge ordinance, isn't it 12 feet if the neighbors agree?
If the neighbors agree, it can be 12 feet. Now, here is the dilemma, and this is what I because I was involved with the hedge ordinance as it went through the process, just as a citizen of the city. This is exactly the thing I tried to point out to staff, and for some reason, I don't think it ever really got the attention I thought it should have because of this issue of putting a hedge on a retaining wall. We have them all over the city, and the city staff did not really pay attention to that because this is exactly the condition that would require the thing to limit at 12 feet if agreed by both parties. So they count it from here. And that's what city staff clearly didn't understand when we went through this thing. And quite frankly, this is my opinion, not anyone else's. My opinion is staff ignored it. And this is why we're dealing with part of these situations. So let me go back then to, just for a moment, to two issues. One is, yes, we have a new ordinance, and yes, you're correct. If both parties agree, it can go to 12 feet, but it's going to need some help from city staff to make that work, in my view, on this particular case. The other thing that I need to share with everyone is this board, and we've been told by the city attorney and city council on several occasions, we are not here to guarantee private views from anyone's home. And we're not here to guarantee any views from people's homes, any specific window or any specific house. Now, the board is concerned about privacy issues between two properties, and obviously that's the subject of today's application. And so that's one of the things the board is going to need to weigh in. Does this solution provide privacy for both the applicant and the neighbor? So that's something you need to think about as we go through this discussion. So we're here today to look at this. This has been moved from consent calendar up to the full board. The project, as presented, could get design approval. It could get final approval if we felt the drawings were sufficient, but that's up to the board. It could be asked to return to the board with comments for perhaps a different solution or a different approach, or it could be denied outright. So that's kind of the actions we have, any actions of those that can be taken in front of us. Yes?
We're still on comments, correctly?
Yes.
We haven't gone to comments.
So go ahead.
I was one of the reviewers, and I apologize to you because Lisa, because I remembered saying to Joe, we need this to go to full board, because I was very concerned about it as well. So that's why I guess somehow I thought, I had something to do with that. But anyway, I'm glad you're here. This is great because this is one of those situations that Mr. Sweeney warned about. And I got what he was saying when he mentioned it. So it looks like a hedge solution isn't going to help you any because they're going to measure it from your level, not from the level at the setback.
Correct.
So given those circumstances, I now can support this, which I didn't think I could at first, but given the circumstances, I think that this is a pretty good solution. I think we have to remember that this privacy wood piece is only is only a piece of it. It's not going all the way across the back property line. It's just where their private area is going to be. So, being a lover of privacy myself, I can certainly understand how you feel about this. There is one other solution that came to my mind, and that is to plant 2 wonderful trees with big wide canopies within your open yard area about where that structure would be, or a little bit, to leave your passageway across the back property line there, maybe just the side of it, that would create a wonderful canopy for you if they were evergreen trees, and they would not be able to look down upon you if they were evergreen. And that would be a nice green solution, be a lot less costly, and probably less controversial. And you have every right in the world to put 2 or 4 wonderful trees here that would be smaller trees that would all have a wonderful canopy and give you the privacy that you require, along with your retractable awning. Those are my feelings about it. I would love to see the green solution, the tree solution first. But if that's not something that you were willing to look at, then I can support this project.
I'd like to follow up on that. I tend to agree with Denise, and I really appreciate what you had to say, Fred, regarding the hedge height. And because you've both been kind of confronted with something that on paper may look right, but in the actual reality it really didn't work. Because I too agree that a green solution would be far superior. Making this hedge stay at 12 feet would have been a much more pleasant solution to your privacy issue. And the fact that both of you were required to take that down just seems so ridiculous to me. So I'd have to agree with Denise that, under this, and I'm hoping maybe, Fred, we can revisit that hedge issue and get some clarity on that and better specifics regarding that. But I'd have to say that at this point, that's the best option.
Other comments?
Yes. I have to agree with both Denise and Brian. I'm concerned about the maintenance of the wood louvers, that might pose some difficulty, and wondering if there's any way to get some sort of modification for this hedge, a proposed hedge in this particular situation, being that the city was the one that proposed taking down the reasonable solution.
Any comments?
Yeah, I think the idea that was brought up about the trees is a really great idea, and but I also thought that Joe's idea about some kind of vertical solution, maybe even in conjunction with the trees. I think you could avoid that big 20-foot tall. So I'm not really excited about that 21-foot tall wall.
I think the city put this hedge thing in the zoning ordinance, and all of a sudden you're taking offense, and to me it's a mockery over what the city did for a hedge. I mean, you put a screen or a fence up, 10 feet higher than the hedge is even allowed in this city, and that's the reason the city put the height limit on the hedge. I don't agree with it at all. I think there's a lot of other solutions that could come up with it without having a 21-foot high fence. I call it a fence there.
Other comments? Could I see the photograph? I think you had a photograph looking at this wall from the yard.
Okay, at the 8-foot?
You had a photograph kind of down here looking that way towards.
Okay, yeah, I've got, let's see, there was maybe this, let's see which one. Oh, I think you want to go to that one.
Okay, but we don't have a photograph to kind of see this.
I've got photographs looking at the
So
existing 8-foot.
this little arch thing is right there?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
this is right there.
Is right there. Did these exist?
No, those were putting in so that
that's
greenery can spill
understand.
behind that, yeah.
Okay. My comment is I disagree with my colleagues about they could support this project just because it's presented. Particularly in the same comments, you indicate that a landscape solution is superior to an architectural solution. And I'm not going to support this solution. I think that I understand the issue for the applicant about privacy. And I think it's unfortunate that the neighbor felt they were entitled to what they were entitled to. Nobody's entitled to anything. What we're entitled here is to provide privacy between the two neighbors. And folks in town that continue to feel like they're entitled to a view just because they bought it doesn't mean they get it. So I think the solution's got to be a combination of some architectural element and a landscape solution. And I would encourage the owner to supplement their design team with a landscape person that can help them come up with a solution that would give us a combination of a landscape solution, whether it's trees or another hedge configuration, along with an architectural configuration that just doesn't give us a straight wall. I think there could be a very beautiful articulation of a wall element, a vertical element, which is allowed within the 250 square feet, that could undulate along that property line that wouldn't come off as a 21-foot high fence. So I don't think we're there yet. I think there's a solution that's obtainable that would allow the applicant to have privacy, that would allow the applicant to have privacy in a condition at the completion of the installation of architecture. One of the challenges of a landscape solution is some of these things take a long time to grow. And so the folks have to live with the interim period, which is not exactly a great situation. But I think if you look at a combination of a landscape approach and an architectural approach, that could get you where you need to be. And I think in some conditions, it doesn't necessarily need to be all 21 feet for the whole length. I think if you look at it carefully, and again, I probably would have to go out and spend some time standing here to study it, but I think there's a combination here of a vertical element that would identify the specific privacy issues that the applicant's concerned about, but also allow for some addressing of a view and privacy issues from the neighbor above. I don't think we're there yet. I think there is a solution here. I think it's a combination, in my opinion, a combination of both an architectural element and a landscape element. But at this point, I can't support what's in front of me until I see a better way to do this. So, any further comments? I believe the applicant needs some direction here, so the chair would look for a motion of some sort. Before we go to that, yes.
Yes, can I say a few things?
Sure.
I appreciate it.
Make sure you speak in it.
Yeah, okay, so so we are here with a non-landscaped solution because, we can't landscape in this 6 feet of setback, and we have enough room to circulate in this portion of it. That leaves us with the open space. The spirit of the open space is to be open and to be used, and that's what they prize in here. We could propose a few large trees. We did discuss that. It was not what we wanted to do. The owners felt that would take up their valuable space. I do suggest that a big wall in the open yard, once you put an opening through that, you've got a structured element. It's no different than anything cantilevering 4 feet into it, and I would suspect that when it gets boiled down to it, staff's going to consider that to be not allowable anyway within the open yard. We've gone through a lot of creative solutions just to get this far. I really would like to get a straw vote here because, the owners have enough invested into this that they just don't want to do anything other than they feel that they've got something here that is sensitive and that is transparent and that if it's not approved, it's not being treated as other structural elements that are proposed in the buildable area. And as we can see, the precedence is for the progression to two-story structures and why something that just provides privacy is treated less than a second-story mass is something that is hard to work back from. So I would really like to see a straw vote and see where it is, and if we don't have support, please deny the project.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. I'm going to comment further. There is a solution here. This isn't it. And I don't believe the city is saying you can't landscape in your setback. I think there needs to be some creative thinking here. I don't see it yet. I think you can get there, but it's not here. So I, for one, am not going to support a motion to do that. And I will look to the board then to make a motion if the board chooses to request a straw vote. Certainly that's up for discussion. But I'll look to my fellow board members.
Mr. Chair, before we get to the motion, I do want to note that the drawings that they are presented here today, the existing wall element with a fountain and the proposed archways, that portion of the wall is in the setback, so that won't be approvable. But I imagine that the architect can make some modifications to the drawings. So if the board feels that this project in concept is supportable, you could perhaps make comments to continue this project and make comment that the project is in concept supportable.
Well, I have a
without giving it approval.
I have a question. You're saying the lower wall is in the setback.
Yeah, see, it's just the other side of the setback line.
So you're saying they're going to have to move that wall?
No, it's because the applicant is proposing to raise the height by adding the arched elements. That makes it over height in the setback.
Yeah.
So it requires a modification?
It would.
What we're talking about is that the existing block wall is about this high right here.
Yeah.
And so because that block wall is closer to the property line than the wood wall, the solution is to bring the wood wall down, or just to keep a gap, an opening right in here, instead of bringing the block wall. So it's a bit of a, I mean, this is the kind of thing that has kept coming up through the course of this situation. There is such a narrow window to do anything to provide privacy here. And this is and we've gone through this several times, and I do understand what David's saying, and yes, that technically you cannot increase the height of a retaining wall, and it's technically within the setback because the property line kind of slices through the middle of
here.
that. Yes, it comes
Okay.
right.
So,
into
David,
that.
what you're saying is this piece would require a modification. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's the element of the wall
Or
where
just bring the wood down.
with
If
the
this
original
wood comes down, it doesn't then. You see, so all we do is get rid of that and continue the wood slats, or nothing at all. Just have that.
the wooden slats are outside of the setback, but the
wooden slats
existing
are
wall
outside
and
of
the
I understand.
additional height is in the setback.
It's just this piece right here that would, if it was kept as drawn, that would require modification.
Correct.
Everyone understand that? Okay. So it's this piece that would
because it's-
require modification.
It's because it's behind the wood
Right.
in the
It's in the setback. See, there's the line. Setback if you come all the way down. Okay? All right. What's the pleasure of the board?
Someone's got to make a motion.
I have a question.
Yes.
You asked that if there was no support, that we deny the project, not continue it.
Not continue.
He wants
And
a
if-
straw vote.
Well, excuse me, if there's two actions here, we can take informally a straw vote if we'd like to, here
Yeah.
at the board level.
Why not?
Or we can take a formal action of a motion. If the action of the motion is to deny the project, then our decision is appealable directly to the city council. This puts this whole issue of hedge heights and the retaining walls and all that other stuff in front of the city council.
It's a good idea.
Okay? Now, I'm going to make a comment, and this is my own personal view. Council really looks to us to try to come up with good solutions. That's why they appointed this board. My opinion is that in conversations with individual councils, they're not terribly happy with having to make decisions without our expertise. In other words, bumping things up that present a appeal decision. So I think you need to think very carefully about whether or not, if you deny the project, that then this board and representatives from this board will have to appear in front of council to explain why they weren't able to drive to a solution that was amenable to both the applicant and the neighbors. So that's a very serious discussion. Okay? Chair looks for a motion to give this applicant some direction.
Well, this is my follow-up comment on that. Based on the fact that they had to be required to remove the hedge due to a city requirement, I can support the project.
Chair would look for a motion.
Can we have a straw vote?
You can have a straw vote. Somebody has to make a straw vote motion.
Okay, all those in favor of the current designs, please raise your hand. Is that what we're asking for?
Wait, you have to
Oh.
form it.
How many board members could support?
How many more members could support
How many
this project as presented?
how many board members can support the project as it is presented? Raise your hands. So I'm the only one? So we're the only two? Well, then it's not being supported. So,
Right.
yeah.
So, in a straw vote, it's not being supported. So then the motion can be one of two or three things. One is a motion to deny. As I said, that then could be appealable by the applicant or the neighbors to City Council. The motion could be a motion to return to the board with a series of suggestions and comments for the applicant to consider and return to the board. So I think that's kind of the avenues we can go down.
One question here. It gets appealed to the planning commission, right?
No, this goes to the City Council.
This would go to the city council?
This goes to the City Council. Okay, so Chair would look for a motion of some sort, give direction to the applicant. If no one can make a motion, the Chair will suggest a motion, and then someone can act on it.
I'll try it, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I move to continue the project for 2 weeks and to return to the full board with the following comments. The board understands the need for a solution, and we would appreciate continued development of a partial fence combined with partial landscaping.
Okay, that's
a motion.
That's a motion on the floor. Is there a second to that motion?
I second it.
There is a second to that motion. Is there further discussion?
Do you want to just change that to architectural element? Because it could be anything.
Right.
So I don't know if you want to say
Okay,
fence.
say what you want to.
So instead of saying
Friends, say architectural element.
fence, say architectural element.
Okay,
Is that
that's fine.
acceptable to the seconder?
Yes.
That's a friendly amendment. Okay. Everyone understand the motion?
Yep.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I would like to ask, because it looks like there's support for that motion, what about if we could add applying the good neighbor guidelines?
Bernie, that's already in motion. They're having conversations,
Oh,
and they're
okay.
not being able to converse.
Okay,
Okay?
so we won't put
We've
that
had
in.
police reports, we have all kinds of things, so it's not
Okay.
like they haven't talked to anybody. Okay? Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Okay, so you need to go back and
Well,
rethink a
let me
solution.
I asked for approval or denial, and what we're being offered is we're being offered direction.
Yes.
And so that that direction, and I want to talk to you, Marie, about it,
Yeah.
because I know that that's not the position that you wanted to take.
No.
So what I'm going to suggest to the applicant is that it sounds like what the motion, it's actually a workable suggestion.
Okay.
No one's saying that you can't have
Right.
your privacy. They're wanting us to get creative and introduce
Correct.
some greenery into it.
Right.
So I would suggest that
Okay.
we withdraw our request for denial and go with the board's motion.
Okay, all right, so that's where we are. Okay? All right, we'll see you back here with hopefully a solution. Okay. All right, let's go to item number 4, 1534 La Cornelia Drive. This is here for a second concept review. Project design approval is requested. Project was last reviewed on August 24th, 2015. As we did with our last
Your comments?
application, we do have some letters, and I'll give the board opportunity to read those as we approach public comment.
Careful what I push over. You put your purse over here, I'll steal it.
This one's just going to sail through anyway.
Thank you.
There's more than one, there's three. Three letters.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Yes. I am Bill Wolf with Pacific Architects, and to my right is Leila Khashoggi, the owner, and to my
Sam Maphis, landscape architect.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. Miller, could you read our comments from the last review, please?
Yes, I can, Mr. Board, Mr. Chairman. Number one, the board appreciates the style of the architecture. Repeated myself, sorry. Number one, the board appreciates the style of architecture. Number two, study lowering the second-story plate height to 8 feet. Number three, study the lanai on the east elevation for a different approach to the roof structure. Number four, reduce the glazing on the tower element. Number five, study the stone work on the west elevation. Number six, reduce the square footage. Number four, follow the good neighbor guidelines. Action carried by Miller, seconded by Motisha. Action was carried unanimously.
Thank you. If you could share with us how you've addressed those comments.
Yes, I'll start with the square footage. We reduced the square footage down to a 100% FAR. That was about, well, the lanai is included in that, but we reduced 483 square feet out of the structure. We had 111 FAR, 111% FAR, and now we're at 100. So that was that item. We did just about everything that you requested us to do. I'll look at the elevations first. Well, let me show you where we reduced the square footage. That's probably the best place to start. Let's look at that first. While we're looking at the roof plan here, you can see that originally we had the second story come way over. It was a large closet, and we've reduced that square footage down. I'll show that to you on the floor plan, too.
Sorry.
And what we did was, again, all around I reduced. I pulled this wall here in, I pulled this wall in, I pulled that wall in, I pulled this wall in, probably 18 inches, 18 inches. This might be closer to 4 feet. I also converted this from what was a full roof covered sloping pitch with enclosed sides now to an open trellis with a flat roof and roughly a 8-foot beam line underneath that. So we reduced that. Then upstairs, as I mentioned to you, that's the lower floor again. You can see where I reduced square footage there. I had this was sitting out here, and we pulled the closet wall in and reduced the square footage there. I also took square footage out of here. I took about a foot out and scooted that wall over and lined that up with the roof above. And then in terms of elevations, I'll show you that.
Have those here?
Yeah. If I had PowerPoint, it'd be easier.
Yeah. You get a paper cut.
Yeah. So what we did here, starting with the entry, if you recall, we had probably another 3-foot height here to the plate, and we had glass all the way around. We had lots of glass in that tower. We reduced the plate down, and I ended up just doing a real simple window there at the front. I also dropped some of these plates over here, dropped the garage plate a foot, dropped this wing over here a foot. Now, what I didn't do is you had suggested that we go to an 8-foot plate on the second floor, and the reason I didn't do that was in lieu of being able to keep kind of a flat ceiling line and doing a hip and not getting complicated with the ceiling inside, I left that at 9 foot. So, but I did drop this tower substantially, and we did drop these elements here. So that's that. This, by the way, I think in your comments, Brian, you had talked about the idea of changing the stone on that face, and we don't show it. Yeah, we don't show it. I think it was you. Maybe it was somebody else. The retaining wall from the site actually covers a good portion of that, so you don't really see it. And I'll show that to you in the site plan if you want. So then on the back, again, drop to plate a foot here. I think I left that at 9. And then before we had this large sloping roof here, it sloped all the way down and connected here. And it was more or less kind of like an indoor-outdoor space, although it was covered on 3 sides, so it got counted as square footage. That's now a trellis, but it does have a solid roof on it. We've got some skylights, flat glass skylights up in there. But again, we've pulled it back off the edge. So for all intensified purposes, it'll look like a trellis element with beams exposed. And then we repeat these columns as we do on the entry. Show you these sections here. Put that around. So this is a new site section. La Cornilla driveway winds down, and that's that retaining wall, Brian. You can see where we kind of hide that. I also did, based on your request, Fred, a kind of elevation showing, again, as best I could. You know, we know where these are based on the aerial that we have. We know where the meets and the lines are there. We went and met with this neighbor, 8 foot, 12 inches, 8 foot plate, 8 inches, 6 inches of structure. That's about the massing of the neighbor's house. Our house, of course, new. The original house, you can see kind of dashed in there, dark heavy line. We're 24/7. This one's 22/8. And then this one, you know, lengthwise, figured probably a 3 and 12 pitch on an 8 foot plate. So it may be 9, but I'm assuming worst case scenario. So 8 foot.
It's also important to show that this is the road up here.
This is the road
above the house,
So
showing how low it
just
is.
so make sure everyone understands what they're looking at. This is I think that this house is pink. This is towards the harbor. This is towards Goleta. The street, La Cornilla, is up here behind these elevations. So you're looking at the elevations as if you were looking them from the opposite ridge. So, and then as you recall, in this neighborhood, there are other homes up here that are way up above on the other side of the street that are up here.
I didn't understand, what did you mean by 24/7? You said something really fast.
The height that we've got from finished grade to the peak is 24'7".
7 inches.
And the one,
And the neighbor, again, based on an 8 and an 8 and a 4 and 12, 22'8", roughly, without measuring it, but that's pretty standard height. This is kind of a good aerial that sort of shows that. We did meet with the neighbors and showed them what we were planning to do. This is our lot. This is the one next door that you saw there, the 22'8". That structure. This is the single story to the northwest.
Mostly west,
Yeah,
I think,
mostly west, yeah.
This is that hill as it comes up behind you were mentioning.
And what happens is, of course, this drops down to this Hondo Valley and back up again, and Miramonte is on this side. And really, the folks that will see it is going to be the folks from Miramonte. I don't think you can see it from down in the valley as you go further down toward City College there. I don't think you can really see it at all because it's really wrapped around this corner. These homes here on the corner kind of visual there. This is a good shot. There's the apartment group. The City College is here. Cliff Drive, it would be a stretch to be able to see that through there. But again, the folks from Miramonte will, and so that's just a note for you. Lots of homes and cluster and things like that on this side. Again, we're doing, and I'll let Sam do a little talk again. He didn't really change much in his plan, but you know, we're just having a little walk down to that lower level. We're not taking it down into the valley. We're not trying to connect into any other trails. At least that's not the intention, and I don't think we can just because of the steepness of the grade and the quantity.
This is all developed in there now, isn't
Yeah,
it?
these are older. Yeah, I got what I got.
Where's the TV station approximately?
TV is right here.
Okay.
There's the commercial building and the houses start, so they're kind of scattered. And there's quite a few actually over here that are large homes as well. There's one out on the point here that's over the 100% FAR. There's quite a few actually that have a higher FAR percentage as well. Did you have anything? Did you want to add anything, Sam, on your plan?
Well, just an explanation of the concept, since I wasn't here before, and I don't know how easily it was interpreted, but I brought some references in terms of pictures of the kind of hardscape path or stair and kind of natural boulder walls. We'd be creating stone steps coming down from an entrance at the street. Instead of coming down the steep driveway, I hope that you had noticed this last time, that we're going to wind down a series of steps and landings, and we're going to put masonry and nice natural boulders on either side. These are just examples of other projects that I've worked on. We have big stone risers and treads that we'd be using to get ourselves down and to enter as a pedestrian would park on the street, or guest would be on the street, because there's plenty of room for parallel parking. So this would be screening here. These are new oak trees that we're going to bring in. We do have an existing oak tree that we're retaining, and that does a really nice job of screening of some of the two-story between the two homes. So the oak theme seems to do very well on the slope, and so we're going to continue that. The back patio is just an expansion of what really is already there with a new design configuration. We're going to add a little level change or grade change to a smaller, a little lower patio to give us a different view perspective, to be down a little lower. 2 feet lower is all, so it's not much. The walls in the back to create that are going to be, again, stone walls, very natural Santa Barbara stone fitted dry stack looking walls, so it's not going to be really refined masonry work to allow, again, another access down to this little existing oak grove that's on the property and straddles the property line. That's one of the nice little kind of microclimate areas with shade on the property. So this is kind of a maintenance path for us to get to a flat area, to sit down amongst the oaks for grandkids to climb in the oaks in a hammock, and so that's the reason for this. Accessibility, to walk from this patio, a nice ramp. The terracing of this allows for layers of planting, so I think this will be a soft elevation. It won't appear any higher than 5 feet of terracing, and then we'll have cascading plants. Again, I didn't know how much of that had been understood, and I wanted to at least give you a general overview of the landscape concept, hardscape.
Thank you. Anything else you want to present?
I do have some floor area ratios too that I could present. I just wanted to show a lot of concern about floor area ratios. We did do a cross section, and there are quite a few. These in red here. I'll turn it around so you can see. 123%, 113%, 114. Here we are, 94. Of course, through any area, you're going to have a smattering of different varieties, 75, 78, 79, 84, 52, so, 82. There's quite a few that are in the 90s and 70s as well, but I just sort of highlighted those that were a larger. We also did a quick look at those on Miramonte as well, because those are the folks that are going to be looking back at this property. And we've got 111, 109, 106, 105. So we thought that 100% FAR was workable.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
There's 140 as well. On Miramonte. Oh, okay. All
right. Anything else? Thank you. All right, before we go to board's questions, comments, we do have some public speakers. We do have some letters that we received right at the beginning of the meeting. So I'm going to give the board an opportunity to take 4 or 5 minutes to read the letters. I think there's 3 or 4. So we'll take a moment just so that we can all read those letters. Okay, would you like to share that? Need to share that. You can explain why you're stepping down.
I'll be stepping down on this project because of a possible perceived, I don't know,
Conflict of
bias.
interest?
Conflict of interest.
Conflict of interest because, you need to explain why you're stepping down. Conflict of interest because there's another individual.
Because there's a letter from another individual who I am on a board with.
Okay, on the Mesa Association, correct? Okay, thank you. All right, so board, please take a few minutes to read the letters.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Amber, just be noted to the record that Ms. James had to leave at 5 o'clock. Okay. We all pretty much up to speed now on the letters. I would like to share with the community and with the neighbors. We all volunteer on this board, so the time we spend here is volunteer time. And it would be most helpful if when you write letters, those letters could be sent in so that we can see them ahead of time rather than having to take time during the board meeting to read them. That gives us a little better ability to understand what your concerns are. So I would encourage you to please try to get the letters in ahead of the meeting rather than on the day of the meeting. Okay, we do have letters. I will summarize those letters and then we'll go to the public speaker. We have a letter from a Hans Meisner, who lives at 1542 La Cornelia. He's concerned about the size, scale, and bulk of the project, that it's not compatible in terms of its size, scale, and bulk. He requested that the 20 closest homes assessors reports be provided. I think that was done just a few moments ago. He's also requesting that the board consider requiring story poles for the project, and is not clear on the amount of grading that will occur as a result of the project. We have another letter from Roxana and Fred Anson. They're also concerned about the size, bulk, and scale. They're also concerned about the nighttime lighting effect that would be presented by the solution. There is a letter from Kathy McCammon, who is also concerned about the size, scale, and bulk of the house and the lighting effect to the adjacent park area. There is a letter from a Karen Bridgman, who essentially the letter is also concerned about the size, scale, and bulk and its effect on the adjoining park. And then there is a letter from a Tim Putz. Says he won't be able to attend the meeting, but again, concerned about the size, scale, and bulk. So let's go now then to the speakers. Hans Meisner, if you could come forward here, would you sit there, please? Microphone. You have 2 minutes to address the board with your issues, and just speak into the microphone, please.
As I noted already in my email to you, I still believe that the size of a proposed house is too big for the size of the lot. It is too big for this immediate quiet residential neighborhood, while there may be some other homes in a larger vicinity with the same FAR. They are in the minority. This minority should not set the standard. Some of these larger homes may have predated the neighborhood preservation ordinance. According to the single-family design residence guidelines, for projects over 85% of a maximum square footage, the guidelines state that these projects are more likely to pose neighborhood compatibility issues and are generally discouraged. While certain exceptions can be made, additional information may be required. I request that the 20 closest homes county assessor report may be available. I also request story poles to be required. Since this project is in the hillside design district and this area is subject to erosion, I would request information as to how much grading will be required and information as to whether the work to create and support the patios, the landscaping plan will affect the stability of the whole hillside, including my property. With a house this large, I'm afraid that the street will be filled with cars of service people, visitors, and others, and that there will be no place for my friends or the visitors to park. Could the long driveway be designed to accommodate some of the on-site parking?
Sir, your time is up.
Okay.
Before you leave, though, could you, on this map, could you point where your house is? Is that it?
That's him right here.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Right next to it.
Okay, our next speaker is Kathy McCammon.
She also lives there.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Kathy McCammon, and I'm here representing myself.
Okay.
I have some pictures for you. I'm sorry I'm not that good at pictures, but this will give you an idea of the two properties. They're two different pictures. And then here is the view from Mr. Meissner's patio and looking down towards Miramonte, and this is a view the other side showing the little bit of the adjacent home on the other side that will be impacted. So, as you said, I'm concerned with the size, bulk, and scale of the proposed structure, and that it should be looked at in terms of the 20 largest homes in the neighborhood. That's what the design review guidelines recommend. I worked on the neighborhood preservation ordinance and guidelines years ago, and I'm very troubled that so many large structures are going in and no one seems to care. I've spoken to Mrs. Khashoggi about my concern, and she said she wants to hear from you. So basically, the burden is squarely on you to determine what will happen. My concern I'm addressing today is that the house will have a broad impact on Honda Park users and the homes on the other side of the Honda Park. That there will be a considerable amount of glare and light because of all the glass. It may affect even people on Harbor Hills. I think Mr. Sweeney said last time that we'll have a lighthouse effect. And I think it's really good that story poles are being requested because it's the people over on the other side that will need to see how big this is and determine how much glare there will be, because it is down from La Cornea, so the impact will be across.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker is Lee Howland, please.
I've been given to understand that the value of my home is determined by the view. Mr. Chairman, I understand your views on the view, but that is what is most important to me. I've heard you loud and clear about the fact that this board is not required to protect views, but I must indicate that I do understand that Ventura has view protection laws. I feel this strongly: the exemplary world-class views of Santa Barbara should not be unprotected. It seems to me a travesty if in fact they are. With this home, the lighthouse effect that you spoke of last time is of concern, and I think you mentioned helicopters could be coming to see this house. My husband cannot be here this evening. He's not well enough. And we both wish to thank Mrs. Khashoggi and Mr. Wolf for coming to our home and pointing out to us where the proposed roof lines intersect the back of our property. My husband is indicating that he wishes to point out the hazard of constructing a social area where smoking is likely to occur down the embankment so close to Honda Park. He experienced a cigarette being thrown out at a party there one time and had to deal with that. The trees and brush there are extremely dry in the high fire hazard area. He's indicating to his opinion the FAR for this project at 100% appears to exceed that of most homes in the area. Now, you covered that with showing us. I have a question regarding trees in the back of the property. Are they going to be trees that grow up in height? I wasn't aware that there were going to be trees planted in the back of the property. We're doing oak trees, is that correct?
We'll answer that as we get to our questions.
Where do you live?
He's right
there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other correspondence? Anyone else in the public wishing to address this project? Seeing no one else, the chair will close to public comment and bring it back to the board for questions. This is here as a second concept review. The applicant's requesting project design approval. Who has questions?
I have no questions at this time.
Okay.
I do, yes. So to address what that last speaker said, these oak trees at the bottom of the property, are those existing or are those new?
Those all are existing,
Okay.
Denise, and then there's one existing one on the east, kind of southeast
The yucca.
part of the house.
Mhm.
It's up towards Cornea and the
Oh, I see
cul-de-sac.
up in
It's
here.
that area.
Yeah, there it is, right there. And then, so you are intending to put some new ones in the front of the house along La Cornea, but you have any other intention for trees down below?
No more
on the
trees
lower
down
slope?
below. I do intend to put screen trees and privacy trees along the front south part of the property. So we're going to add, to the same feeling we have, a very healthy oak tree. We're going to play off the fact that the soils work and it likes it. And I think the intent is that when we're in our driveway and when we're down in our property, we don't necessarily want view from Cornea down into the property. So because we're so far below, we're trying to create a nice, playful landscape to experience as you come into the property.
One more question about your lower terrace there. I noticed it's pretty steep down there. You're going to have to retain that lower edge on that terrace?
We are, and then I have another wall in front of that, so that edge of that little sunken area will probably be about a 3-foot wall, and below that might be a 5-foot wall.
Okay.
So we will have some exposed masonry. That's why I brought samples of the kind of masonry we'll be using. But there's plenty of area to plant that and soften that.
Okay, and then
it's
how
very
about,
low wall and low.
how about further down that really lower terrace down at the bottom of your railroad tie steps?
Where that is existing, a flat area.
Okay.
So that at the bottom of those stairs bellies out to a flat little almost bench at that oak tree layer.
So no retaining is
So there's no retaining there, and it's just as minimal an organic set of steps as we can get down to access to maintain the slope, to do all the right things for that north
Wonderful.
slope.
Thank you.
What do you see? Before we go to other questions, do you have a piece of tracing paper? Do you have
I have one in the car I can get.
Could you go get that, please? Joe, go ahead.
Show me the section with the street on it, the black line with the street.
Oh, the long section with the
Yeah.
three. Okay, so let's go towards the
Three
back. I
houses and
think.
the street.
I'm not sure which drawing it is, but we'll flip through them as quick as we can. No.
You mean
The front?
elevation?
What you have is a loose sheet.
So we're loose sheets on the top here with photos. There it is. That one?
Yeah.
So this black-
This is what you see from the street, or from across. Let's say across the street.
Right,
back.
so this is on a bench, some 15 feet below Cornea.
What do you see looking from the hill on the other side, looking back this way? Do you see
That's
the
what
house?
you see. That's what you're seeing. You will
That's
see
what
this.
you see, and then the street beyond it.
And the street
Right.
is beyond, further away than what
Yeah.
you're going to see. And then Mr. Sweeney pointed out that there's an existing topography that keeps rising to a ridge that is 50
So
feet higher than this.
basically, these windows these are the only windows that are above, that are high above the street. And
But this
high-
street is behind,
You're
is
looking
behind
the
the
other
house.
way. This is the back side. You're looking from the park side.
You'll see this, and behind this, at this level, is the road.
street, yeah. Okay, I have questions about, it solved my questions about this lighthouse effect. It's hidden, the house is basically hidden down in a...
It's sunken below the road.
From the road and from both sides, from the road.
If you look, I think you've
These
got
two
another
sides
section
separate.
there, but
I
without
do
any-
have another.
without having to dig it up. Here is the street, the house sits down here, comes down, this is the park.
Goes back
and then
up.
we've got across the canyon, we've got another set of homes.
Miramonte, right?
That's Miramonte Drive.
ATV Hill.
Oaks and whatnot right here. And those
This is a lot of oaks at the base, those existing ones we pointed out.
So this is the street. I think he's got a section that shows.
yeah.
So what we're seeing here is we're looking that way. That line is this line right here. And this comes across, and then the hill goes up, and there's some other homes
It actually is
up there.
more like that. You know,
It's pretty steep.
Pretty steep.
But again, all these homes have glass and openings towards the mountain view. So every one of these is in keeping with the neighborhood.
If you look at that, if you look at the photographs that were submitted, oops, there's glass here on this home. That's this home.
New remodels all the way along are open glass to the mountain view, so.
This is all glass, that's all glass.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, other questions? Yes.
Mr. Chair, a few questions. Well, I wasn't here on your August 24th meeting, but how much of a reduction in square feet did you do for the house?
Well, we took about almost 500, but part of that I will attribute is to we had to include the outdoor patio lanai, but that was because it was enclosed 3 sides. It's now open on 2 sides, and it's not added, so that's about 200 of that 500 square feet. So we took about 300 out of the footprint of the building, upper floor, lower floor, and 200 out of the lanai.
Okay. And then you are Tier 3, right? Or
Yes.
aren't you?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
with the, I'm just curious, because maybe I'm missing something, but what are you going to do about that?
Well, the patterns in the patio will be permeable.
Oh, okay.
So I think
wondered
that the openness of those big panels or big modules of paving will be permeable. They could be pavers, but the intent is to absorb as much as possible and control the runoff, because there is drainage now on all that big patio. So there's a big patio that exists. So we still have some work to do to determine just how that's going to be successful.
Okay.
Yeah. The large part of the existing pre-construction is paved. So are we reducing it? Maybe not. Maybe we're increasing it by a little bit, but we do get a credit. So.
And so that brings like the next question that somebody asked about grading. So it's probably, as far as the backyard, it's just this little area.
That's the only part we'd be doing any cut and fill on. Yeah.
And
the driveway is the same.
Okay.
Oh, maybe a little bit for the
stairs would be cutting and filling a little
into
bit.
the hill.
Okay. Working on that slope.
And then, where's the historic wall? I didn't get that one. There was one comment about please take off the plants on the historic wall. There's some wall. Was the last comment?
Oh, Ms. Pierce, that's actually a different project.
Oh, it was.
Oh.
I was going this wall, this little wall, that can't be historic.
Okay.
It's a big flurry.
Other questions? Other questions? Let's see, you answered the question about the tree heights. I do have a can we go back to that site plan that shows all the houses on it?
Yeah.
The aerial?
No, this one. The reason I asked for the tracing paper is I just wanted to get clear. This has a home on it now.
Yes.
Where is the outline of that home?
Yeah, it actually shows on the floor plan better here. Let me show you that. The next one.
I wanted to see it in reference to the two adjoining.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, it's different scale, unfortunately. It's this house. I can trace it in red, but it's there.
Okay, so its current position is just
pretty close.
At least this piece.
It's actually less.
I understand.
Yeah.
So if I go back and translate that to this, then
it's going to come out here like that and go along here, and then
it comes
turns
back
and does something like that. And
right. So if I'm taking a current photograph standing in this yard here to get that view,
you're looking at that corner.
You're looking at that corner of the house, and if I'm getting that view to this house, I'm standing Out where?
Way on a deck, probably, maybe?
Maybe over at this far corner to get that
view.
long
Because
angle.
This house is here now.
They have a deck that's out here somewhere.
Oh, okay.
And
Right.
so
So
maybe
if you
they're
stood
there.
on that, you could see this.
Maybe.
But even in this current in the new configuration,
We're shoved back.
okay, so, all right. And then the other thing that I wanted, if I could use your red pencil, if I could just quickly take this footprint, and if I'm doing this correctly, like that, something like that. That's your
Mhm.
current footprint.
Yeah. Mhm.
If I compare that footprint to this footprint,
Yeah.
okay, I'm not talking about the FAR or the size. I'm
Right,
just talking about
yeah.
the footprint. Okay, so that's that footprint, that's that footprint, that's that footprint, that's that footprint. Okay, so I just want folks to pay attention to the footprint. You know, you can have this discussion about FAR, but just check the footprint. Okay? All right? Thank you. I think those are my questions. Okay, this is here for a second review, requesting project design approval. So, no further questions? Let's go to comments.
I have no comments at this time. I want to hear what my other board members have to say. I do have a comment. I think the architecture is very nice. I think the style of architecture is well done. I think he answered our concerns. The style of the architecture is nice. He answered our concerns. If there was one area that possibly could be addressed is maybe reduction of the square footage a little bit more, but that's my only comment.
I agree with my compadre here. I think I didn't understand the architecture at first. I do now, and I think it would be a lovely addition to the neighborhood. I think that what you just did with the building footprint was very revealing. It's really not any bigger than any houses around it. Although the FAR number is always something that rings bells, and we were put here as a board to help people comply with our guidelines. And so if there's any way that the square footage could be reduced, I think that would be a really good idea. But so far I can support the project with a slight reduction, more reduction in square footage.
Other comments?
Well, since this is the first time that I've seen it, I'm pretty much in agreement with what's just been said. Looks like a nice.
I think the neighborhood is overwhelmed by just the fact that there is so much more detail, and the house is a newer house. We're looking at these pictures. We're looking at houses that are 1960s, 1970s.
Yes. Yeah.
Houses that are basically very nondescript, and the neighborhood wants to stay that way. I would say as the houses get sold, people are going to remodel the houses, and they're going to add more glass. They're going to change their neighborhood, and I don't see any reason why we can't, why you can't start maybe some changes now that aren't that outstanding. They're just different than the 1960 houses that are there, that are plain roofed. There's no icing on the cakes on any of them, and that's all the neighbors are looking at. That's my feeling.
Okay. Other comments? Okay. I'm going to go to my comments. First, on the architecture, it's not an issue of whether the architecture is nice or cute or whatever. Is the architecture appropriate to the language of the architecture that's in the neighborhood? And having spent some time up on that neighborhood, on that street several times, as you know, we had a project just a few blocks down on the opposite side of the street that went through quite a bit of review, site visits by this board, lots of public input, a very challenging project. It's finishing construction at this point. So one of the obligations of this board is to make sure that the size, scale, and bulk of projects fit within the fabric and the context of the neighborhood. And part of the challenge here is folks like to use that term size, scale, and bulk all in one fell swoop. And it really has to be broken down into three components. Size has to do with, as it points out, as the word says, size of the house. How big is the house? The bulk is its massing, how it sits on the site, how it sits in relationship to, how it sits in relationship to other homes, other structures adjacent to it. That's the bulk issue. And then scale has to do, generally, most people agree that scale has to do with the relationship of the building element to the human scale. And I think you had on one of these drawings, and I would encourage architects to really take the time to put human scale on here, because then we can start to understand what human scale is to... They're a little hard to read, but let me just do this. What human scale has to do with the relationship of the home? Okay? Because that's one of the concerns. So size, bulk, and scale has to be looked at 3 different components. And yes, they go up to make the final solution. So it's my general feeling that this architectural approach, given the fact that it's broken up, the mass is broken up, the bulk has been broken up, really does, in fact, speak to the human scale and in a very residential way. We're not looking at a vocabulary that has a very contemporary approach. We're not looking at a vocabulary that's similar, as Mr. Momatisha has pointed out, of a period in time where the architecture was fairly germane. I think we're looking at a piece of architecture that contributes to the enrichment of the neighborhood. With regards to the comment about the lighthouse effect, yes, this house will have a lighthouse effect to some degree, but so does this house. So does this house. If you go to Miramonte in the evening and you look back across this hill, all of those homes have a lighthouse effect. On the park, they have a lighthouse effect on the entire city. That's a challenge. That's always a challenge when we look at design. I think that my bigger concern about the lighthouse effect was the front staircase. That was my primary focus on that comment, and I think, in my opinion, the designer has addressed that by reducing the amount of window on that staircase element and by reducing the size or the scale and height of that element. So I think that's been addressed. As demonstrated by the little exercise of comparing footprints, you can see that the footprint itself is not much bigger than the footprints of the adjacent homes. Yes, the FAR is at 100%. And I don't believe this board takes lightly the issue of the FARs. We are paying attention. I think the accusation that this board is not paying attention does a disservice to the board and work that this board does. We look at every single project in regards to FARs, in relationship to the size of the site, in relationship to the adjacent neighbors, and in relationship to the general complexion of the neighborhood. I think on occasions we have been fairly strong about reducing those FARs, and on other occasions we've accepted those. So I think to indicate that this board doesn't care about the FARs is an inappropriate comment. So I'm going to encourage my fellow board members to give this project design approval. I think that the applicant has made an effort to use the Good Neighbor Guidelines as indicated by the letters. Several meetings have been occurred. Particularly present are folks that have a concern about the size, scale, and bulk of the project. They've been in those meetings. I think this has a series of dialogues that can allow this project to move forward. So I would encourage a motion to give this project design approval. Obviously, that will be appealable. We will also be in a position at some point, if the project proceeds, to consider giving it final approval. But I believe it's at a point where the designer can proceed with preparing that second set of drawings. So the chair would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, before we get to the motion,
Yes.
I do want to add a note. I had a conversation with Public Works staff, and it appears on the plans that there are currently poured-in-place concrete paving of some sort over the existing sewer easement. I don't know if the applicant has had further conversation with Public Works, but if the board should give this project design approval, I would add a comment that the applicant confirm with Public Works that whatever paving solution they proposed over that area is acceptable with Public Works.
And so should that be part of the motion? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I would include
All
that
right,
note.
so if someone wants to make a motion, you need to consider that in your
Was that an
language.
easement?
There's a
It's
sewer
a sewer easement. Yeah,
Sewer easement
runs the whole length.
we've done some research on this one. This one is a sewer easement. That one we're thinking is defunct.
So if you translate that to the there it is. right
There it is there, yeah.
So
So we're
just-
outside of the structure of it.
Structure is
out of it, but we do have paving there, so, whether it's movable pavers or something, we can do that. We'll talk with Public Works for appropriate solution.
Okay.
Would like to make a motion?
Yes.
I move that we approve the design.
Give it project design.
Project
approval?
design
Okay,
approval.
and you have to make sure that we read the rest of this.
We give it project design approval, and the board is very cognizant that you have lived up to the things that we've asked you to do. There is, I never know how to say this, safe aware, you are aware that we're you followed the good neighborhood quality guidelines and good material and guidelines, and somebody help me here.
Okay, you're probably going to need to say something specific about the FAR at 100%.
Yeah.
You either need to indicate that the 100% is acceptable, or if your motion is asking to reduce that, you need to say that.
No, I think the guidelines is acceptable at 100%. Based on the fact that the outline of the house is pretty much the same as most of the other houses in the neighborhood, and just because it has more detail and more, can I use the word pizzazz to it, does not change the fact that it's pretty close to all the houses in the neighborhood.
In terms of the footprint.
In terms of the footprint.
So Amber, make sure the word footprint is in there. That's your motion?
That's the motion.
Okay, and then you need to probably also, as indicated by Mr. Eng, indicate some language about the sewer easement.
And that the sewer easement be recognized and addressed in the design of the landscape and of the project.
Work with Public Works, too.
And Public Works.
Okay. All right, that's the motion on the floor. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, there is a second to that motion. Is there further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, the chair shall call for a vote. All in
Member
favor?
Lutetia, can I just get could you read into the motion the NPO findings? I know you touched on some of them, but just for the record, so we have a complete motion.
You did good neighbor guidelines.
Good neighbor.
Quality material.
Yes, so we have good neighbor guidelines, we have quality materials, and
landscaping is appropriate? Not
Landscaping is appropriate.
All right, is that clarified? Is that acceptable to the seconder of the motion?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
In discussion, consistency and appearance of the proposed development is consistent with the scenic character of the city.
Is that acceptable as a
That's
friendly
acceptable.
amendment?
Acceptable to the seconder.
Okay. That's the motion on the floor. Any further discussion? No further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, abstentions, so carried. This has a 10-day appeal period. It's appealable to the City Council.
Oh, I'm sorry, where is this being continued to? Back to the full board?
Back to full board, I believe, yes. All right, we're going to go to item number 5, 969 Isleta Avenue. I said that right.
On your way. Finally. I just we have to go that one, I guess. Yeah. You can take this one back.
That will take that. So, did they bring the pizza into the lobby? That's why your phone rang, right?
It did, exactly, twice, and it was, they're saying, are you coming?
Excuse me, if I can bring the meeting back to order, please. We're going to go to 969 Isleta Avenue. I'm going to read into the record the project description. This is a new item. The proposal for a 576 square foot second story addition, a 48 square foot second floor deck, a new entry deck and stairs, removal of unpermitted shade structure and water heater, an interior model to an existing 1,327 square foot single family residence with an attached 431 square foot two-car garage. Excuse me, this is a public meeting. Thank you. The project includes removal of the two interior posts in the garage. The proposed total of 2,512 square feet on an 8,134 square foot lot in the Hillside Design District is 78% of the maximum required floor to lot area ratio. The proposal addresses violations associated with the zoning information report, ZIR 2014-00257. This project includes staff hearing officer review for a front setback and two interior setback modifications. Project's here for comments only. It still requires an environmental assessment and a staff hearing officer review for requested zoning modification. Welcome. If you could introduce yourselves, please.
My name is Patrick Moore. I'm the architect.
And I'm Paul Chrisman.
And Pat Crispin, homeowner.
And just to clarify, Mr. Chair, also, in the translation here, there is a 290 square foot first floor, and that didn't get put into the wording that you just read.
Signs got left out.
Well,
Right.
but it was in the notices.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Want a quick overview?
If you guys, it's your presentation, so present
Okay.
what you need.
So we purchased a 1941 house. We're very much endeared with the house, but it hasn't been modified since 1941. It was one of the things we liked about it. The interior, the details, things very much our purpose is to maintain what we like about it. However, certain things like there's no laundry, the heating system is extremely insufficient, inefficient also.
Well, it's antiquated.
And the kitchen is very hard to work with. So our intention is to modify, add a master bedroom upstairs, an office in the back, and create something that's consistent with the neighborhood.
If you could go through the drawings, please.
Okay, on the site plan, the existing house is a single-story house that's fairly close to the street. It currently has a 20-foot setback. The required setback is 30 feet. The side yard setbacks on the existing house are 5 feet. The required setbacks are 10 feet. And so what we've done is add on to the rear of the single-story house. The street is out here. We have a stair tower, or stair up here that wraps around, a first floor addition back here, second story addition up there. Here's the existing floor plan. It's a 3-bedroom, fairly small bedroom house, tuck under garage that fits underneath the living room. Very basic. It has a sort of dead-end corridor that leads into this one bedroom. There's no master suite, no, one bathroom house that we just would like to modernize it and open up the first floor plan a little bit. Originally, we had explored doing a single-story addition off the back, and it's very hard with a linear house to get it to flow with a single-story addition. The second iteration was we did a second-story addition that was limited to this area, and then we met with the neighbors to this side, and they were concerned about their view, and so instead of having a second-story addition over this whole first-story addition, we sort of shoved it sideways to try and protect their view across the back of the house towards the harbor. We're changing the entry stairs. The current entry stairs is just a 3-foot wide flight of stairs that comes up to a 3-foot wide, very congested, tiny porch. We'd like to put a little wraparound staircase, enlarge the size of the front porch so that it's easier to get furniture in and out of the house. Right now, it's a real challenge to get furniture into the house. This front porch does extend into the front yard setback because, as you can see, the front yard setback is actually way back here. The rest of the house conforms to the required setbacks. That, there's a 10-foot setback on the side. We're well over that, and well over a 10-foot setback on this side. And that's the elevation. Oh, yes. Sorry. So here's the street elevation. Here's the existing garage door with the living room above it. The existing ridge height is up here, and it drops down to that level at this side. So here's the master bedroom with the master bath that we tucked it behind some of the existing roof. There's a little second-story balcony up here that we did to get more light and ventilation into the master bedroom, and it also affords them a nice view, of the harbor. Stearns Wharf is out that direction. We've tried to hide it behind as much of the existing roof as we could while still protecting the neighbors' views in the back. And the front yard setback conforms to the required 30-foot setback. And this is the deck that currently there's a 3.5-foot tall retaining wall from the driveway to the front yard. And then I've set some little walls around the perimeter of the deck back a little bit so that we would have a planting strip around to soften the height of this deck. And in the end view looking this way, here's that deck with the planter at the top of the existing retaining wall. This is the addition back here. Rear elevation, that's the existing house would be this dotted line here. And this is the second-story addition with the first floor addition that extrudes out in front of it. And the west elevation, this is the master bedroom with the stair behind the front deck. Then I have some views of the model. Here's the front of the house with the entry porch, the garage door. This is the addition up here, addition up here, addition there, and first floor addition in the back. The addition, this is the rear view. And one of the things, like I had said, originally we had extruded the addition, the 2-story addition further straight back. And then when we met with the neighbor to the west, they're very concerned about their peekaboo view of Stearns Wharf and the harbor. And so we sort of changed our game plan a little.
Well, several.
So here's a view from his rear terrace, and this is our roof here. And then here's a study with the model. I've dotted in red the existing roof profile. You can see the ridge line here. And we had stair-stepped the back of our house. You can see these corners all kind of line up as you look from his backyard, trying to protect as much of the view through here as possible. And any major issues on the
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Well, and one other quick little thing is just driving around the neighborhood, looking at houses. There's a number of 2-story houses or houses that have 2-story elements in the neighborhood, and this is our lot right here, sandwiched between 2 houses that have 2-story elements. And these ones with the blue pin on it are houses that have 2 stories, so there's precedent for 2 stories in the neighborhood.
And just that we have notified 11 of the neighbors within 300 feet, and that the houses on both sides have already had expansions done to them.
Okay.
We've also spoken to the immediate, I'm sorry, we've also spoken to the immediate neighbors. We're trying to do a lot of due diligence so that we don't have to come here and reinvent all of this. So, so we're kind of trying to do it up front and then get here. We've met with our neighbor on the west side, I believe. Is that Pullins? Yes, that's Pullins, 4 or 5 times, and we have modified our plans. You know, we've spun the whole top so that and actually it kind of works out better for both parties, we think. But they're here joining us to also listen and make sure that what's being presented is what we all understand. I've spoken, Paul and I walked the other neighbors. We got about 5 out of 10 of them, 6 out of 10. And the ones immediate that touch all of our properties, they're really encouraging, actually. It was a very encouraging meeting. So it's been good so far. So we're trying to do our work.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, can I add one more little thing? Just the neighbor to the west is back here, their rear terrace is back here, and that's why we jogged this wall back instead of, extruding it here.
Right.
And then also with the roof of the back planes, the existing house is very simple. I felt I should keep it very simple, and so I changed the roof pitch in the back so that the convoluted roof back here is not apparent from the street. So you can see all these little folds, but from the street, it's very simple.
And in meeting with the neighbors in Miramonte behind us, the elevation of Miramonte over Isleta is considerable, so there's no issues with the neighbors behind us.
Right.
Right, thank you. Okay, before we go to questions of the board, Mr. Ng, do we have any correspondence on this?
No, we do not.
Anyone in the audience wishing to address this project? If you'd like to address the project, can you come forward, and can I get you to sit in that chair?
Mine?
Yeah, if you could sit down just for a moment.
That's fine.
This is being recorded, so I need a microphone.
Absolutely.
Or either one, that's fine.
Oh, that's fine.
Thank you. Yes, sir, welcome.
Hi there, thank you, a pleasure. I'm Michael Rassler. I live at 610 Miramonte, literally right above you, across the street from Jeff, who's the architect, I believe, that lives literally right behind you.
I don't know what it's
I just received the notice in the mail the other day.
So you're up here?
Yes.
This
is their street, and Miramonte comes along the back.
So you're up here.
There's a house directly across the street from us that is, I believe, above you, where they've got a multicolored flag, that they just
Right,
put
I know
up
where the multicolored flag is. Is that you?
No, I'm directly across the street from that. That flag alone is enough.
So you're 2 houses away. You're 2 houses away from
There's a street here on Miramonte that is facing due south. We are across the street. We're on Miramonte at 610.
So you're up here. All right.
So you weren't one of the infamous 11 to receive a notice?
Probably
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
But
At any rate, go ahead and share with us.
I took a look when I received it in the mail and just drove around the corner and realized you're literally directly below the house that is directly below us.
Okay.
Right, so it's, 2 houses away across the street, and quite frankly, kudos to you for designing and enhancing the neighborhood. It's all good. I think most of us really look for that, but views are critically important, and we have about 100 and 50, 60 degree view, not quite 180. And I'm just curious because I can't see it from this as you build up that second floor. And it is very steeply sloped, and I imagine we'll be able to see out across you, but we've already got new telephone poles that came up that affect our view that aren't your problem, but are mine.
I did not know that.
And so I'm just curious if there's any elevation view from behind, basically from Miramonte looking out, in that direction, and am I going to be able to see this? Is it going to interfere with our views?
Yeah, that I have not looked at specifically, but for reference point, there's a 2-story house here and a house that's got a 2-story element back here, and we're probably, because the street climbs slightly, we're somewhere between the height of those two, I would imagine.
And I'm just thinking from the last presentation where there were a number of shots of the neighborhood, and you could actually see the different homes around it.
If you look at this photograph, I suspect based on the information being provided, its roof height is probably right in here. This is the second story, so it's probably in here somewhere. We'd have to do a correction, but it's not going to be, based on what he's being presented, probably not higher than this house.
Oh, it's definitely not. I'd be more than happy to.
But thank you for
meet with
inquiring,
you.
because I know how you feel.
I'd be happy to come by and say hello and
Thank
take
you.
a look at what you're doing.
Also, we had met with 610 and 617 with Jim and Denise and Michael.
Well, I'm at 610.
You know what?
611 and 617, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Right.
thank
Sorry,
you.
guys, we didn't-
Okay, we need to kind of move along here.
Sorry.
Okay, anyone else wishing to address the project? Sir, if you could, yes. David's going to have you fill that out. Thank you. All right, I'm going to close public hearing and bring it back to the board for questions. Who has questions?
I have.
Yes.
Railing. What kind of railing were you thinking?
Well, we'd like something as transparent as possible, and so we've discussed cable rail. That there's just a very small amount of railing.
We are not fixated on anything in particular in that.
Yeah.
We're open to recommendations for the board on the railing. These are not things that are, these are minor in.
Yeah, and actually, I was thinking about the upper railing, not that,
Yeah.
but I'd like it as transparent, as light as possible, and
Same style, same plate heights, 40s, you're looking at 8-foot plate heights. You got same plate heights at the second story?
we do that. Because I'm trying to protect some cove ceilings on the first floor that are existing, that I'm floating the second story above the existing ceiling joist, kind of, so that I don't damage that. But then I have an 8-foot plate on top of that. And then, not that it matters to you, but in the master bedroom, I was going to use scissor trusses in it. So they
The
get
windows, same windows,
similar
window. You're not replacing the lower windows?
No, they were replaced at some point before the Chrismans bought it, and they're white vinyl.
Vinyl.
But, a white frame would look appropriate, I think, for this.
Okay. Other questions?
Is the garage going to stay the way it is? Nothing changing?
Well, the only thing that changes in the garage is there's currently 2 posts, and it's a existing non-conforming garage, and I'm removing 2 posts that are in the way just to enhance the usability of the garage, inside the garage, yes.
And there's sky hooks that are going to hold the...
No, just a paralamp.
Okay. Other questions? Okay, no more questions. Plate height, you answered. The type of windows, so they'll be double hung, typically? That's what appears to be on
what's
the
there, yeah.
existing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And I think the rest I'll save for comments. Other questions? This is here for comments only, so we're not able to give it project design approval yet. However, in our comments, we need to address the issue of the modifications, whether we believe the elements within the setbacks that they're asking modifications for are appropriate. Okay? So maybe we can go to the drawing. Is that this drawing shows it? Yes. Right? Let's go to comments. Who has comments? Yes.
So this looks like a project that is well within our guidelines. As far as the modification goes, it looks like just the entry porch is the part that is in the...
Yeah, I think there's 3 separate modifications.
Oh, there are 3.
One is the entry porch.
Entry porch.
One is changing by adding a second story, we're changing the character of the house or something like that.
Okay.
And then the third one is, even though our addition conforms to the side yard setbacks, the existing house doesn't, so we're modifying a house that...
Oh. Even though your second story is not within the...
It was a surprise to me.
But this is the other issue of the overlay of these
Yeah.
zoning overlays that now put all these homes non-conforming.
Yeah. So now you have to pay for a mod for that.
Right.
Even though you're not building in that.
They're changing one window.
Good
Right.
God. Okay, well, that's, in my opinion, extremely supportable, and I will be able to support the project.
Yeah, I think you've done a lot of good work. I think your remodels, well, like Denise said in the guidelines. The only question I have about the railing is, I understand your point of view, but I think, well, what did they do back in 1941 so that you'd have a railing so you didn't have to block your view? And I don't know what the answer is. So,
We do.
so that's kind of where I'm left
It's an
at.
iron railing.
Okay. Oh well.
Other comments?
There you go.
Well, I think all of the members of the board probably really appreciate how you've been working with the neighbors. And I think your perspectives here are really helpful. And I like the design.
Any other comments? I'm a little concerned about the size of the entry porch, and I understand why you did it. And I just want to make sure my colleagues are okay with the size of that. It's not a big issue for me, but what is scale?
It's 400 inch.
4 inch. Is 12 by 11 or 10. So I just want to make sure my colleagues are okay with that. I really appreciate how you did the second floor. I think that's important. The only thing I might suggest when you come back from a design standpoint, and I realize you've dropped this down to 8 feet, which is important, is I think this elevation could use a little help. And if you're going to do this, and if you're going to use that as a gable end rather than a hip, just the proportion of the windows in this surface, this is one of these cases where I think the windows ought to be a little bigger.
Actually, that's what I was thinking.
I think
We
they
were
look
trying to be
a little,
conservative.
yeah. I think they're a little too conservative in the relationship of how you're laying it against this thing. So I think this is one of the cases where I could say that could use a little help. In terms of the railing, I don't have a big issue, trying to match the architecture. I think the cable rail might be a good solution. You might consider just reducing the visual impact of the vertical post to make it go away a little bit more. But I think, cable is fine. Yeah, in the 1940s, they probably would have used a vertical metal bar. That's also appropriate. And I'm glad you didn't come to us with glass, because that's a whole other discussion. But I do hope that when you do come back, that you draw in the windows the way they're actually going to be. Obviously, one of the things this board really doesn't approve is vinyl. So whatever you're going to do new should really be a more acceptable solution. Typically, people are putting in clad, which seems to be, in terms of a maintenance issue, a way to do it. We have some others that come back with
It is high fire also, so
wood
vinyl's no good.
wood fire. So those are my comments in general. The only other, and I just now thought of it, question, given the extent of work, looking at my landscape colleagues, do we need to add any landscape thing to this?
Yeah, I was just thinking that, because like right in front of the deck too, wondering what you have in mind. And yeah, I agree. I think it would be good to see
At least some, whatever is going to happen here, and whatever might happen in the backyard because of this thing.
I pretty much agree with what everybody's saying too, but when you do come back with that deck and with the landscaping, if you could also put it with some photographs of the next door house on either side, and then what it's going to look like and how big that deck's going to, what's the visual impact?
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, this project requires comments only, just to give some guidance to the applicant before he returns, and also whether or not we're comfortable with suggesting that they do proceed to the staff hearing officer with our comments rather than returning before going to the staff hearing officer.
I have a clarification question,
Yes.
Mr. Chair. What was your comment about the front entry porch? What was your concern?
Oh, my concern is it too big?
Got it.
It's just a size issue. It's not a big deal for me, but I just want to make sure we all looked at it.
Well, I'll make a We'd like to move the project to continue with the following comments. The board appreciates the style of architecture and the fact that you addressed the issues regarding adjacent views with neighbors. We'd like the client to explore in possibly changing the size of the windows on the south elevation on the second story. The board feels that the cable railing is okay for this style of building. Also, the board supports the fact of your modification is aesthetically appropriate to the proposed modification and does not pose any consistency issues with the following design guidelines. So that is my motion.
Okay, that's the motion on the floor. Just one clarification, continued back to the full board?
To this modification.
Yes,
Okay.
back to the full board.
All right, so that's a part of the motion. Do I have a second to the motion?
I'll second it,
Okay.
and I do have a question about, do we want to talk about the deck? Because we haven't really decided if we want that size.
Okay, well, right now, his motion is
Oh.
saying it's okay.
So,
And also the landscape.
so what is your request on the landscape?
So to show us the neighboring views, a photo of, what's going on both sides of the
Okay.
house. And to provide some sort of landscape showing what's going to be at the front entry there.
Okay, that's suggested.
Okay, I accept that suggestion. It sounds like Amber wrote them down already. Do I need to repeat it?
And I guess I do wonder, I still think the size of the deck is up in the air.
Okay, so I would like to amend my, well, not amend it, but suggest that you look at the possible size of the entry porch, explore.
We still have a little more discussion.
Reducing it or keeping it the same?
Well,
You need to give him some direction. Are you saying you'd like some consideration to reduce the size? Yes or no?
Can we explain one thing with the, I'm sorry.
Let's keep it
Well,
to the
sorry, I'm kind of in a quandary about it. I have no issue about the size, but there are certain members of the board that do
No,
have.
that's okay. You're
question.
making the motion. There is a second.
Okay, then I say I have no problem with the size, so I'm not going
Is that acceptable to the seconder? You want to withdraw your second?
Yeah. I
Okay,
think so,
she's
'cause
going
I
to,
still
okay,
like
so she's going to withdraw her second. She has some concerns about the size. Do I have a second to this motion?
Yes, I'll second.
Okay, so the motion is seconded. The motion is that the, just to reiterate, the size of the porch is appropriate and compatible with the neighborhood and is aesthetically appropriate with the modification request. That's the motion, I believe, correct?
Yes.
That's part of the motion. The other parts I won't repeat. So that's the motion on the floor. Is there further discussion? Okay. Hearing no further discussion, the chair will call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Two opposed. Any abstentions? So the motion passes. Okay, so you can proceed to staff hearing officer and return based on the comments.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, let's go to item number 6, 941 Medio Road. Oops, that goes over there.
Yeah.
This is our first board meeting, so we're very
I thought we had a letter.
New guy.
Okay. Uh-oh. This is a new project, so I'm going to read into the record the project description. This is a proposal to demolish 16 square feet of existing 1,215 square foot single-family residence and all of an existing 331 square foot detached garage. The proposal will add 1,278 square feet. The existing proposal will add 1,278 square feet. I assume that's to the existing residence, including a 208 square foot to the existing 77 square foot basement, and includes a new 419 square foot attached two-car garage. Also proposed are a new CMU equipment enclosure, a new CMU retaining wall, new fencing, new trash enclosure, and a new swimming pool with a new pool deck. 244 cubic yards of cut and fill grading outside of the building footprint, and restoration of an historic sandstone cap and pier wall on the property. The project will address violations identified in the Zoning Information Report ZIR 2014-00443. Proposed total of 3,181 square feet of development on a 10,690 square foot lot in the Hillside Design District is 83% of the required guideline maximum floor-to-lot area ratio. An administrative exception is requested to allow a fence and wall to exceed 3.5 feet in height within the 10-foot property line. In addition, staff hearing officer review is requested for zoning modifications for additions and alterations to the dwelling for the garage, swimming pool, and pool equipment within the required front setbacks. This is here for comments only. Project still requires an environmental assessment and a staff hearing officer review for the requested zoning modifications. Welcome. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Thank you. My name is Anders Trodsen. I'm the designer and agent for the owners, Mr. and Mrs. Robert and Grace Gulak. And I'm here to present the project.
Okay.
You did a great job with it.
If you could go ahead and present, please.
Basically, we have Mr. and Mrs. Gulak bought this property in December. We did a house for them in La Cañada a few years back. They moved across over to Switzerland for a few years and now are in Tokyo and want to move back to the States and make this their permanent residence, hopefully within the next couple of years. The house is an existing single-story structure. If you've been to the site, most of you would have noticed that this is a, well, from Medio, it's an upslope lot. From Farello, it's a downslope lot. It's a corner lot, which is severely constrained because it has front yard setbacks on basically all around it, except for the one interior or rear yard, which is its rear yard setback, which would require it to now have 30-foot setbacks around the whole perimeter of the property. The existing structure is basically in this area here that you can see. We've done another exhibit that shows the existing structure, which is done in this hatch pattern here. The outline of what is the allowable buildable area is denoted in this area here. So with our setbacks from the property line to here being the primary setback, front setback, this being another secondary primary front setback here, secondary setback off of Medio Road, basically created a space that's virtually non-buildable. I mean, there's not much to build in that area. The existing structure already encroaches into and outside the buildable or setback area on all sides. What we're proposing to do is remove the existing garage that encroaches all the way up to within 3.5 feet of the setback along Farello Road, move it away from the street, bringing it further into the property, allowing cars to come off of Farello and have a parking area for guests to come into the property because parking on Farello and Medio is tight. We decided to keep this as a single-story structure for several reasons. One of them is that the clients wanted a single-story structure. They don't need a big house. They want 2 bedrooms and nice living space, nice kitchen, and a backyard area. Wanted to maintain the views from the neighboring properties above, maintain compatibility with the neighborhood because majority of homes in this area, there's a spattering of single-story and 2-story, but quite a few of them along this area are towards the west are single-story. Single-story with an upslope, so you have like a garage below. So, right. We did a exhibit that showed because we had to, because we're so constrained with where we could actually add square footage. What we did is we did a couple exhibits that showed, given the same square footage of a standard lot, given that size, what your buildable area would be. So a lot size of equivalent size, rectangular, would give you this buildable area. Whereas this lot gives you this kind of fish-shaped space right in the center. The areas that are hatched in the darker color are those that are encroaching into the required setback, being this area here towards the north and this area towards the south. We've given the square footage areas of the encroachments. This being to the south, I think this is 200.
286
Yeah,
square feet.
286. And then to the north, 429 square feet. The existing floor plan had the front entry off of Mayville Road, so you had to, go back to the site plan, you had to basically walk up from Mayville Road, upstairs, or up the driveway that's there, then up a walkway, and then come up the stairs this way, which turned you around on the property. So what we wanted to do is reorient the entrance to the property, so when you came into it, you open the doors, and basically the house unfolded towards the view. So your views are out this way towards the harbor. It's somewhat deceiving too if you've been to the site, that the property line is substantially, there's a substantial distance from the curb. It's a good 15, 20 feet away from the curb. So it gives you this false perception of a much bigger property than what it is. The fence that's also existing there now is actually out at the property line or a little bit past the property line. So we're having to move everything back away from where it is now. So it's going to actually move further away from Mayville Road. The front entry right now is hatched here with these staircase that's going to be removed. Comes up to the front door right here. What we're doing is removing the front door here, which is now an existing bedroom. So you're going to walk into an entry gallery here, and this will be a window that opens out towards the bay. The stairs will go down to a basement area underneath this living space, which is 90% subterranean, because as it slopes down, majority of it's back in underneath this area here. And we have a section that shows exactly what the depth of the basement is and the adjacent grade. So then as you come into the house through the entry gallery to the left, you'd go through the living space, which would carry you into a hallway, which will step down then to the master suite on this side. Doors that would open out to a patio area and a pool here. Again, to the southeast. To the right would be another bedroom suite on the westerly side of the property. So you have east-west orientation, easterly side master bedroom suite, westerly side the guest suite. And that's pretty much it. Sure do. This is a basement plan. This is existing basement here, and then we're increasing it. Roof plan. We also kind of created or maintained the articulation of the building so that it kind of followed the existing lines in Farello and Medio. Sorry.
Okay. We're used to it.
So the dashed line here is denoting Farello. So it's kind of the opposite of the previous project. This is actually, this road, Farello is here. So from Farello, this is what you would see. You would see this would be the street here. This would be blocking this much of the house. This portion here is blocked by the street. So this area is what you do see. So this is all existing here. From here over is existing. From this point over is new. And as you go towards the added area, the height of the street increases, so less of the structure is actually visible. On top of the existing curb line here that's shown is the existing historic sandstone pier and cap wall that would be maintained. We already spoke with Nicole. Nicole about that. Yeah. These are the elevations that would be seen from Mobile Road. And this is as you come up Farello, looking at the roadway. Because of the angles of the structure, we did several different elevations to best exhibit the elevations. We didn't develop the elevations to the fullest extent because of the modifications that we're requesting. So without knowing fully whether or not we'd get modifications or the approval for the modifications, we didn't spend a tremendous amount of time developing all the material details and exactly the connection details, et cetera, how everything would work together. And then we have building sections. More building sections. Another building section, and then the demolition plan.
Okay. Anything else you want to share? Thank you. Okay, before we go to questions to the board, I've got one letter. Has everyone had a chance to read this one letter? Two letters? Where's the second letter?
Right behind you.
Well, Mr. and Mrs. Gulak were in town, and they did deliver letters to all the neighbors.
Okay, thank you. So there is two letters.
No, that was the historic wall, I thought was
Okay,
in.
so we need to take a minute to read these. Everybody? Okay. So we have one speaker that would like to speak, Timothy Gonzano. You'd come forward, please, and sit. You can sit at this chair right here. Speak into that microphone.
Sure. So I'm actually just the direct neighbor right above on Ferrella Road. So I've been in.
Same side?
Same side of the street. So I'm the.
Right there?
Yes, I'm right here.
The remodel that's.
I'm actually the 2-year remodel that just came in front of your board, past 2 years. So, I mean, my only concerns are just to be involved in the process, make sure that I like the single family or the single floor design. I think that's the best way to go. That both of our lot, like I didn't add anything to my lot because of just there's not much room. So, like I looked at the plans. I went over down to the city, last week, and I just find it's going to be really tough to make a house work in terms of adding space on that lot. I just as long as the and the other issue I kind of have is the changing the whole house is now it's a big corner house right now on Medio. Now it's going to become a first house on Ferrello, and it's going to really change the look. So I mean we have this big Spanish style house across the street, beautiful. I kind of took a California cottage and made it a little more modern. And I kind of haven't had a chance to really fully go through the plans and understand what kind of design we're going with. Just want to make sure these houses that are right there, Ferrello's kind of zigzags up the hill. And so there's not, there's quite a bit of traffic that comes through. I just want to make sure everything stays consistent in the neighborhood because that's where I'm going to live for the next quite a while. So, I mean, that's just I wanted to make sure I was involved because it's the first time ever having to go in front of the design board for on the other side of it, and those are just kind of my concerns. It's just changing, how the heck you're going to fit a 2-car garage in. They currently have this single-car garage. I had to change my 2 single-car garage into a double-car garage and take out a center thing. So I think it's going to be tough to fit a 2-car garage right at the corner of this lot. I just don't see how that's possible. Haven't had a chance to go out with a tape measure, but I know that's going to be tough. It's what's deceiving or what's difficult with the plans is the angled view to kind of understand how the proposed change will be. But so those are just my concerns, mainly just changing the entrance and really getting closer and closer to my own lot. I did just add a second-story deck to my properties that can see over this house and the house right below mine on Medio. And just want to make sure that we stay consistent and not overbuild and go from there.
Just to be clear, you live in the black house?
The dark gray, yes.
Black house.
Black.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay.
Didn't make any points there.
Apparently.
That's it? Okay. All right, anyone else? All right. Let's go to questions of the board.
Did we have any pictures?
Not that I know of. Do we have any pictures in the file?
I have some printouts I just created just now. Unfortunately, I couldn't locate the photos in the file.
Which one?
Can we put those in the?
Oh, this is it here.
I think without really going up there and looking at it, when you go up there and look at the lot, it looks like
it doesn't look that big.
It doesn't look that big at all. And when you describe you putting in the swimming pool, you're putting in a new double-car garage. You're adding, let me see, 1,278 square feet of new structure, and you're only eliminating 16 square feet. I drove around, I read this, and I drove around there today, and I drove it, and I turned around, I drove back up the street, and I turned around, and I says, where are they putting all that stuff? But that's not our board's decision.
You got to go on the property, because it's deceiving. It's like, it's 2 lots, basically.
That's
so
what
there's
you
a lot
don't see
next,
is beyond
exactly.
the ledge right
It's
there.
a tremendous amount of property.
Before I leave the public comment, I just want to make sure we read these 2 letters. The 2 letters are concerned about, I think it's this wall. This is the historic wall?
Correct.
Okay. And the 2 letters are indicating they, 1, want to preserve it, 2, they'd like to take the vegetation that's growing on it off.
Right.
My question to you is, what was the read from Ms. Hernandez? About the
I have to go back to my notes on
about
that.
the shrubbery on it.
She said ideally they wanted to keep it, but as I recall, she said it wasn't. It was in a study area, but it wasn't a designation.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I understand.
So
did she talk about the vegetation on the wall at all?
She did. She goes, we'd like it to be removed ideally, but she goes, obviously you need to figure out how you're going to do that, because if you remove it, certain parts of it may come apart with the vegetation, so you have to be very careful with that. So that's.
And I think your intent was you're keeping the wall?
Absolutely.
Okay. Right.
And the driveway is staying where the driveway is now?
Correct, in its general location. So what's happening when you see this garage, this is where the existing garage is now. So an issue or perceived issue of increased mass, as you said earlier, and quite rightly so, the 3 different aspects of it, you won't, this already blocks what you already
this
see.
will go away.
That's gone, and it's being pushed further back. So you're moving this much further away from the street. Exactly.
And it's angled.
And it's going to be angled, so you're going to be able to come in this way. It will be tight. There's no question about that. It will be tight, but you will get a 2-car garage, and you will get parking off the street. You'll be able to pull completely off the street. We already talked to traffic about it as well, and discussed that with them, and they didn't have an issue with the location, the placement of the garage.
Okay, there is another general question. In the description, it says there's an administrative exception requested to allow a fence and wall to exceed 3.5 feet within the 10-foot front front yard line. Where is that?
Now that's specifically and solely due to the pool requirements for pool fencing.
I understand that, but where is it on the plan?
It will be right here. Well, let's go.
Do you have a
Let's go
drawing?
to a site plan. That would be at this point right here.
Okay, and is that there down?
No, this is out here. The existing one's
Excuse
out
me,
here.
so it's this fence right here?
That's the property line, and the existing fence is here. We're moving the fence back to here.
Okay, so that's would exceed the 3.5 feet?
Correct. Only for this
I understand. And is this wall here now, or is that new?
No.
So that's new.
That's new.
Where's the driveway? Where's that driveway that's coming?
Off of Mega is right here.
There's a driveway comes up here.
Right.
And the zoning violations are all of these little trellises and sheds?
This one here, number 17, is a shed right here.
Right.
And then there was another shed over here.
Right, and was there something in here that I saw?
Just an air conditioning unit that was put in without a permit.
Is that the telephone pole? That was
Correct.
right? Oh, that's why, because I thought that was the side of the property.
No, exactly.
Goes all the way over here. Okay. I went to Google Earth, that's the only way I could figure it out.
It was very
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
how tall is the wall that you're going to be building, that you're
Here.
proposing? How tall?
No, that can't be any higher than, I think it was 3 feet, or 3 feet or 3.5 feet.
So this fence is higher than the wall?
Yes, because this has to be 5 feet from the outside for pool
I
purposes.
understand it. So this is going to be lower than that fence?
Correct.
Okay. very good.
Yes.
And then, okay, so we got this cleared. So the historic wall, or potentially historic wall, is here.
From this point on up.
Okay, and your intent is to keep it?
Yes.
The only issue you haven't addressed yet is whether you're going to keep the vine that's on it now or take the vine off.
The owners want to take it off. I mean,
Okay,
it's
I
a beautiful
understand,
wall.
but that hasn't been settled yet. Okay.
Actually, Mr. Chair, I just add that the urban historian Nicole Hernandez has asked the applicant to remove the vegetation.
Okay, so that's been a
It's her
request.
feeling that the vegetation to remain would do more harm in the future.
And the owner wants to remove it. Okay, all right. Other questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I want to ask David, is this one of the projects where, is the basement getting a special consideration in terms of the size?
Basements count for 50% towards the FAR.
50%?
Yes.
I have a question. I'm kind of hard reading the style of the house. Are you matching what's there now? Is that kind of what you're doing?
Kind of, but what we want to do is take it and be a little bit more, a little kind of more kind of homey.
More what?
Homey. We're going to keep the same kind of the plaster finish on it, which is an undulating plaster. It's got a kind of like not a light sand, but somewhat of a sand finish on it. We do want to go to a different type of a roof, more like either a Roman cannon cap or a clay barrel tile. And then do the Santa Barbara sandstone, stacked sandstone, and then the plaster finish, exposed wood headers.
You're definitely changing the...
Yeah, I don't know what the style is
The
right
style
now.
right now is the
kinda
1940s.
20, it built 20-something.
Yeah, well, with the plaster in the cove.
Yeah, it has this kind of like plastered cove, like set up at the eave.
I wouldn't say a 20. They're built in the 20s. Huh?
Yeah, Doris Quinn had lived, I guess
A
she
lot
was
of
the
these homes
daughter.
were all built in that same period. That whole hillside was built.
Well, with all this
Right.
She was
sandstone,
the daughter
stacked
of it.
sandstone, and the open. Looks like you're going to have open rafters.
Let's try to finish our questions.
Yep.
Other questions?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out what style it was too, actually. That's not a comment, it was really a question.
The actual the rake ends are that coved, and then the eaves actually are open. They're open rafter tails.
Maybe it's the computer drawings.
It does have a kind of
My
flat.
question in relationship to that, the pitch of the roof is 12 and 7?
7 and 12, correct.
7 and 12. Is that what the existing
Yes,
pitch is?
yes.
Okay, so you're matching the existing pitch,
Correct.
and you're repeating that existing pitch in the new additions.
Correct. And we're matching the existing height. We're not increasing the existing height.
Okay, so the pitch is basically, the pitch is the same.
Correct.
Okay. All right. One question I have is, have you talked with the fire department? And the only reason I bring this up is it's going to be a little disconcerting, discerning, it's not the word I'm looking for, to, where's the floor plan of that site plan? To visitors and/or people like the fire department, because in essence, you've taken away the front door from the address. Here. So right now, your front door is here, and your address is on Medio Road, but you're really switching it to here.
Right.
And that's, I don't have a big problem with that, except that you may want to have that discussion, because if somebody's sent to this house for an address, the police department, they get a call, and they get here looking for a front door. There is no front door. It went away. So you may want to have that discussion with somebody. Let's see. Do you have an open yard requirement on this project?
Yes, we do, and it's shown here.
So that's this space here.
Yeah, I went over with David. It's not shown. This actually, since it has to be minimum 20 by 20, we can't include this area back here, but we can include the deck area here, which we did not include.
Okay.
So we do have the 1250.
Okay. And then you haven't really presented a landscape plan. Are you intending to do that?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then just one last question on the elevations. Two questions on this. Is this a window here, or is that an opening?
No, that's a window.
That's a window. So it's clear, it's a window here, and then I think there's a side view. There's a window on that side.
Correct.
And the stone pattern you're indicating on these drawings, is that really the pattern?
No, that's a hatch pattern. That's AutoCAD.
So it's your intent to go to a Santa Barbara traditional?
Right, correct.
More rounded?
Stacked?
Not really rounded, no. More of a cut stack.
Not more of a flag. To me, that looks like flagstone,
Yeah,
and it doesn't do it justice.
No,
Okay.
exactly. It's not like hand drawings. No.
Okay, I think those are my questions.
And we will refine the detailing on it. Like I said,
Okay.
the main thing was to get the
Understand.
modifications.
And this is here for comments because it does require our comments on the modification. So if you make a motion, you may want to address whether or not the applicant should come back to us with additional changes or additional work before they go to the staff hearing officer, or whether you would encourage under your motion for them to proceed to the staff hearing officer based on the modification requests. So let's go to comments.
Mr. Chair, I'm having a real hard time understanding the style of the house. I'm going to assume that you're taking your inspiration from what's there now, which is a 1920s, 1940s house. I mean, I don't know, but you got a point. So I really have part of our purview of this board is to see the architectural compatibility of the neighborhood, and I have a hard time reading your house because you've got it kind of stuffed with all kinds of different styles that don't necessarily jive together. I feel these windows the scale is too big. It's not consistent with the style of the house you have. This seems, in the way you have your stones located, it's just kind of randomly put here and there. Not only that, you're saying it's a hatch pattern, so it's not even the accurate look of the stone. And I'd really like to see an accurate look of what you're trying to achieve. I feel these lights, the scale is strangely large. Maybe they should be here or something like that. So, so I'm just having a hard. I understand you're trying to get this through for mod, but I'm kind of I can't read the. I think that the architectural design needs to be a little more developed. So it's kind of a catch-22, I guess.
Yeah, it's hard to develop.
Let's just allow the board make your notes and we'll come back to you.
That's my
let
only
the board comment.
Yeah, I guess I'm having the same feeling. I think it's kind of wants to be a cottage type feeling, but then again, the big lights over, where they're centered is really bothersome to me. I think they should be to the side instead of right over the door and all that. And the big heavy beams kind of over the garage and the entry and some of the windows, it's like that's going one direction, and then the windows are real modern. So I don't know. I'm stumped as well as style wise, and I don't know why the arched window is even there, quite frankly. But I see the attempt. I'm really pleased that it's a single story, and that that you're getting as much as you are on that lot. That's just amazing. I think it needs some refinement and a definite direction as far as style goes. But other than that, I think your FAR is right in there, and I think you've got a supportable project.
Other comments?
Yeah, well, since Denise brought up the FAR, so one thing that I have in my notes, and I too appreciate the single story, and I know that the coroner has a lot of constraints, so I would encourage that direction to continue. But, you know, at 83%, with the basement only being counted for half, and with the constraints of the lot and the sensitivity to the neighborhood, we, as a board, might want to think about asking for a 20 closest home study. I mean, we don't have to rubber stamp this at 83% because that's not really a very accurate, I mean, it's just something I think that we should study so the neighbors have the ability also to maybe even story polls if we're going to approve
single
this
story
on this site. And the compatibility issue, I think that if the drawings get revised and they come back to us with the stone correctly, how it's going to appear, and the fireplaces, how they're going to appear, the landscaping all together, it will, for me, it will show me that it meets our compatibility guidelines.
Other comments?
I think I can use the size, bulk, and scale. I think it fits very good, all three of them. But I think it's just a hodgepodge of stone that without thinking you've thrown on, and you're throwing this board's opinion of the architecture way off, because it does, I mean, it looks and it fits our guidelines, but just with a little bit of tweaking and a little bit of your work and present to us again, you could come up with something that's almost exactly what it is, but shows us more of what is presented. But I like the project. I think it's good.
Other comments?
Yes. I think that the layout, the floor plan is really clever. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think that's really successful. And I agree with everybody else about can't figure out the style from the drawings, and it could be computer, but it does look like quite a mix of different elements.
Other comments? Yeah, I'm going to dovetail. This is one of these questions, this is one of these projects where it really could use, not only for us, but for the neighbors in the community, it really could use a proper rendering technique. I understand architects, do a lot of good things on computers, and it's fairly accurate, et cetera, but I think you see the dilemma here, that it's hard to understand where you're headed with the architecture without a decent rendering, particularly when you're using a computer-generated template for the rock. I think that's hard. Some of the proportions here need some work. I can appreciate why you're introducing maybe this different element here, but I think the proportions aren't there yet. It needs some more work. Certainly, yes, these light fixtures are inappropriate in terms of their size and their location. You're introducing some elements here that might be intriguing, but there's not enough rendering here to really sell this project. You're having a difficult time telling your story. When I was in practice, what I tell my staff is your job here is to tell a story, and you haven't quite told it yet. You can see the reaction. So I think if you can work on that, you might get there. The relationship of these windows here from this basement, that's a little Midwestian, so it needs it's not a word. Needs some help.
Minnesota.
I think that one of the things that's going to help getting this project through the process is really understanding a landscape plan.
Sure.
I want to go back to the modification issues. See if they show up on this site plan. This is one of these, and I think justifiably so, you've indicated that here's a case where we've used two-dimensional zoning and we just laid it on a hillside with no accounting for the shapes of the roads, the property lines, and/or the existing homes. So now we've got these big setbacks that don't make any sense. So from that perspective, I would endorse a motion that indicates that this board would be certainly amenable to the modification to allow this structure to remain within these setbacks that quite frankly don't make any sense, given that this hillside property on a winding road on the Riviera. I think that's important. So it's that modification. What else? What else? I want to make sure we cover the modifications. Is it just this one?
This is the modification for the setbacks of the encroachments, which are these and these.
Okay.
And then it's the pool.
Being able to build in the
exactly,
setback.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got two modifications or three?
Three, I think.
Pool, setback, and the buildings.
Correct.
Okay. So when we get to that discussion, we need to be able to
The pool was
address
the fence height, too, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Okay, the fence. All right. And I certainly would encourage, if you're not familiar with Santa Barbara that much, Ozzie DeRoss he is the man.
He's king
He's
of
king
stone.
in terms of stone
Oh,
walls.
okay. I was like, all right.
King of
So
stone
you're
work.
going to tread a lot of water had you
Did that
chosen
wall.
to do something different with that wall, but I think you're okay.
Is he still around?
Yes, he is still around.
Son
Is
is.
it O or A?
So
His dad did the
his
Ozzy's.
dad built half. He and his dad built half this city. In Stone Mountain.
all those beautiful stuff.
I would not go there, but I think you're okay.
The last project my father did here was in 1947 in Montecito, and it was written up in quite a few different magazines.
All right, so you understand.
And should I go back and address those real quick?
Yes.
As far as the developed design, I agree with you 100%. It's not indicative of what it will look like. My main focus was to get a read on the modifications because, again, the form will follow the function, and if we can't get the function that we want, then the form's going to change. So I'd be happy to develop that further. The location of the stone, I know it looks arbitrary. This is a hard project to elevate because of the different angles to it, so it looks really odd. But they were thought out. The placement of them is such that it actually will create an impact for an area, but you don't have to completely cover the place in stone. You don't have to overdo it. It'll actually create elements that if you look at it in plan, you see all the stone will stop on inside corners, which will actually define an element, not just create a section of it like a big piece of stone here and then stopped and picked up over there. So there is a reason and rationale as to how it was developed that way. The window, the one radius window, what that did is that mirrored the front door. So when you look at the front door is an arched door. As you walk in, you're going to have that front door arch, and then that mirror is going to be the window, the arched window in the back would follow that because that's through the entry gallery that projects back out towards the bay. The lights, again, they're thought out. I don't like a lot of lights on the outside of the house. Lights down at lower levels, to me, are a little bit more imposing than when you get a light that's a little bit higher up that casts light down as opposed to right in your face. I'm not, like I said, I just don't like a lot of lights on the buildings. I think it's trying to hide something. So, I could go through those elements and we can refine it, which I'd be happy to do. I think what we'd like to do is put together a 3D rendering of it, and I think that will, a modeled rendering, which would, again, give you a lot more comfort in seeing exactly how it looks, because there's a lot of movement to the building. It's not, this makes it look like one big flat kind of structure, but everything, there's a lot of articulation into it. This stands out, this steps back, this steps further back, this angles that way, this angles back this way, this comes out at this angle. So there's a lot of shadowing and movement that's not depicted on here that I think really will add a lot when you see that.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying, but my comment is that it's consistent with the style of a certain stuff. I understand modulation and movement and whatever, but I need to not be you. But the modulation, movement, and whatever has to be consistent with a certain style of architecture. I can't support buildings that are based on some kind of philosophical point of view. I'd actually want to see a style that you're trying to adapt so it's like consistent with the building and consistent with the neighborhood. Now, there's a specific style there now and that's what I'm reading with this. So that's what I'm looking for. And as far as your lighting goes, I tend to disagree with you. I understand what you're saying, but I think your lights where they are now are actually more aggressive in terms of their spotlighting as opposed to having some cute little lights down here. But, you know, I'm open to seeing a better rendered presentation of the building that, you know, seems more consistent with a specific style. I mean, that's my only comment.
Is this something now, will I have direction now to further develop these?
Well, the floor plan's great. The floor plan's great.
Okay, what happens now, the board needs to formulate a motion with comments. They're either going to tell you, do some more work and come back to us before you go to the staff hearing officer, or we're okay with the modifications and that the approach is acceptable and you can go to the staff hearing officer, but here are additional comments for you when you return. The motion will also indicate whether you're to return to the full board or to the consent calendar. What you have to go through next, once you get past the staff hearing officer and your environmental assessment, is you then formally come back to the board for project design approval.
Okay.
Once you achieve that, that's an appealable decision of anybody in the community. But once you get past that and past the appeal period, you then can develop your construction documents, which you then return for final approval, which also is an appealable decision. Okay? That's kind of the big overview of how it works. Okay, so hearing no further comments, the chair would entertain a motion.
All right.
The comments only.
Okay.
And you need to address in one way or the other the modifications, whether they come back or not come back. So
Okay. The board appreciates let me see, let me rephrase that. The board feels that the overall floor plan layout is acceptable. The board also supports the modifications with regard to the pool around the wall around the pool, the fence
around the pool.
The fence around the pool, the new location of the garage, and the area on the south side of the property as well. That's set into the open yard setback. The board supports those modifications. The front yard setback. Thank you. Did you get that, Amber? Okay. So, and also the board would like to see a more of a detailed study, perhaps a rendering of the elevations, a better understanding of how the stonework is actually going to look. We'd like to see a better rendering of how the windows actually are portrayed on the elevation, a better understanding of actually how the roofing material actually falls on the roof as opposed to some kind of hatch mark. And a more consistency thought of the general style of the house as an overall context.
that's the motion on the floor. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Would there be the maker of the motion and the seconder would it be acceptable to add some language about a request for a landscape plan?
Yes, indeed.
We would also, the board would like to have a landscape plan as well.
That's okay with the seconder.
All right, so that's the motion on the floor. Any further discussion? I would only add, when you do the landscape plan, then indicate exactly how you're dealing with the stone wall.
So is this going?
Did we say,
Is
the
this going
staff
to the
hearing?
modification officer at this point? Or-
That's what his motion is
Okay,
indicating, yes.
Oh, okay, I didn't know if you.
That we're okay that he proceeds to the staff.
And return to the full board.
Yeah.
Return to the full
Okay.
board. Okay. So is that, got that clear, Amber? Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Yes.
So nobody really cares what I said about neighborhood compatibility or the size or any of that?
Well,
Okay.
No,
Okay.
I don't think what you heard, Bernie, is that we're not concerned about the floor area ratio. So that's not in the motion. We are concerned about the architectural compatibility of the neighborhood. That's why he made the motion the way he did. So we want to see more about the architecture, which will allow us, I believe, that's what his motion is saying, allow the board to ascertain whether the architecture is acceptable in the neighborhood. So that's really what the motion is saying. Am I correct?
Mhm.
Okay. And in terms of story polls, that's not a issue that we should address, at least at this early of the process. If we want to consider story polls, that can be considered at the time that we're close to project design approval. Because if the design changes, there's no sense putting story polls up until we get the design fully
Okay, that
set
makes
in
sense.
place.
Thank you.
And also my feeling too is the architect was sensitive that you kept the same height of your building as is
Yeah,
existing.
it's
So
not even changing in height, so why would we want story
Well,
poles?
it's just the layout. But that's okay, I understand. That
Okay.
makes sense.
Okay.
Right? So, any further discussion? Hearing none, the chair will call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Okay, so we'll see you after you get to the staff hearing officer. Okay, let's go to, okay.
Your modification.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Amber, would you indicate the record Ms. Bernstein had to leave?
Do we still have a quorum?
And then let's go to our last item, which is 920 Mission Ridge Road. Okay, night.
Say your,
Okay, this is a new item. I'm going to read into the record the project description. The proposal is for a 579 square foot single-story addition to an existing 1,772 square foot two-level residence with an attached 562 square foot two-car garage on the lower level. The project includes a new permeable flagstone patio and a 45 cubic yards of grading under the building footprint and 15 cubic yards of grading outside of it. The proposed total of 2,931 square feet of development on a 1 acre lot in the Hillside Design District is 59% of the guideline maximum floor to lot area ratio. This is here, comments only because it still requires an environmental assessment. Hi,
Hi.
if you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, Greg Schmatt, designer for the project.
Okay. Can you share with us what you're doing?
Yeah, there's a 1 acre parcel, Mission Ridge Road. It's a long, almost a 340-foot driveway down to this parcel. Hillcrest is to the west, and it's quite a bit below. There's a single-family residence on the parcel now with a garage that's tucked underneath. And I'd like to come up with a bedroom and a bath addition of about almost 600 square feet. There's quite a few oaks on the property, so that was the best place to put it. And also has a nice mountain range view. It's a little bit bigger site plan here. Existing drive, lower garage, existing floor is a split level, has some wood decks around it. This will be recessed into the slope a little bit. It's about a 4.5 foot retaining wall on the backside, which daylights to the existing grade in the front. And just add a little stone patio. These little stone walls are already there. They're about 12 inches tall. It's same single story. So basically, the existing little access hall to get to the new addition, which connects to the deck, little patio, bedroom, bath, closet. The original building was built probably in the early 70s, kind of a 70s modern, if you will. The addition here, same roof, trying to use some of the same siding, but add some more plaster because of the high fire. The existing ridge is roughly 20 feet from finished grade. It's a single story, will be up about almost a little under 15 feet. I just have to add a little more roof mass because of this little rigid insulation, and I need the full depth for insulation. So you can kind of see on the back side how it tucks in the back, and on the two sides how it goes up the grade here. Here. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Crane, is there any letters
Yeah, no letters.
Anyone in the audience
Yeah.
wishing to address the project? No one in the audience? The chair will close public comment, bring it back to the board for questions. Who has questions?
You answered my question.
Okay. This is here for comments only.
Sorry, I do have
Question.
one. The
Yes.
material of the roof, it looks like shake shingle, but I don't think you do that.
Yeah, it's, the existing roof is actually a fire-free, which they don't make anymore.
Yeah.
So we're going to propose to do a Da Vinci shake, which is the Class A roof.
Okay.
And are
We'd
you-
like to do metal, but it's.
Are you doing it just on the addition, or are you going to re-roof
We'll
it?
re-roof the whole thing.
You're gonna
Yeah, it's
re-roof
just
the whole
falling
thing.
apart, barely 15 years old.
Okay.
No one there.
So that should be, David, that probably should make sure that's in the description,
New roof.
that they're going to re-roof the whole thing. Just,
Yeah, we just kind of
Okay.
made that evaluation.
okay, other questions?
Are you keeping it the same color?
At this point, I mean, I don't know if.
Yeah,
Oh,
Yes.
come on, man.
You know, I can warm it up a little more with tone. I don't really quite like the green. Maybe I can bring in a color board next time or something with some roof and plaster and siding colors.
It's a beautiful setting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Other questions?
Great lot.
Wow.
Who owns this over here?
Look at all those
This is
oaks.
actually kind of an open meadow.
I know it.
Beautiful.
Yeah, there's 2 houses off of Hillcrest that come down.
Yeah, this is empty there.
Other questions?
No.
Comments? We're here at comments. This is here for comments only. Give direction to the applicant. This one is one you might consider if you do make a motion, whether or not the applicant should return to the full board or to consent calendar,
It's on this one.
because he will be coming back for project design approval.
My comment is that I think you did a great job. I love the rendering elevation.
No, nobody heard you.
It's so important.
No, I
important to me.
totally support your project. I think you did a very good job. I really enjoy the hand-rendered elevations. Thank you.
Other comments?
I know a house in Montecito that was just sold. It has the same thing. It has a flat roof.
Really? Whereabouts, you remember?
Jerry Goodman, I think,
Oh,
was
did
the
he?
architect.
Yeah.
On Camino Viejo.
Other comments?
Well, yeah, I really like how the setting is, the green in it, the house, I'm not saying it very well, but the trees around it kind of nestles into the environment, so that's why I was asking about the color. So
Okay.
be nice to stay within the same
Okay.
something green.
Okay.
Other comments?
Just beautifully done. I could make a motion. if
Can I
everyone's
just say,
done.
it's just a very organic feel. It's just a really amazing feel.
This is one of these projects, you know, we're always concerned about being able to view sites, neighborhood compatibility, et cetera. If you actually drove out here, I did, I went out, turned around, came back out.
Today.
Yeah, and you can't see this site from anywhere. Virtually, I mean, unless there's a house up here somewhere where there's a window that might look down on this thing, it's completely surrounded. You can't see it from across, you know, usually on this side of the thing, we can see them from across the canyon. You can't see this house, so it's like,
Yeah, even on Google Earth, you have a hard time picking it up.
even Google Earth would have a hard time. So, I mean, you can probably do anything you want. So I think
I just gave you a clip.
one of these projects I could see, given what he's presented, and I agree with my colleagues, it's well done. So I would encourage whoever makes the motion to allow this project just to go to consent.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yes. I would like to make that motion to continue the project on to, what did he need to go to?
He's still got to have
Oh, you need
environmental
environmental
assessment.
assessment, but we're going to continue it indefinitely, right? Or would you like 2 weeks?
Yeah, 2 weeks would be great.
Okay, 2 weeks to the consent calendar. And I would like to, can't make the neighborhood preservation findings.
No, you just make comments.
Just comments, and we have positive comments about the architecture and the way you've nestled it in and kept it one story, and nice job.
Okay. That's the motion on the floor. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried.
I like it.
I think Jamie.
Any further business before the board? Hearing none, the chair will close today's meeting.
Last.
Is hungry?